Yes, so.
That's right.
Like it or not, we're here today.
All righty. So start with human resources.
Wait, let's start.
Okay.
Let's do these.
You didn't open
I'm sorry.
I'd like to call the Selectmen's Budget Workshop number 2 to order. First order of business, pledge allegiance. Charles, if you would please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, changing the batting order a little bit. Mitch, you're leading off.
Lead off, huh? All right, human resources budget. The salaries as they are present will at this point remain the same. Both my contract and Samantha's contract are under negotiation this year. So there's no change. Money will be in reserve for personnel as it is for the other contracts. Everything's pretty much the same. I dropped the office supplies by $100 based on what our actual spending has been, and the permits, dues, and subscriptions have been raised a bit, so there's a little bit of a raise there. So it's only a very small increase in the budget overall, $71 overall.
Questions or comments?
0% increase.
Where do you show us the reserve personnel? Not in your budget?
It's coming up. It's coming up. Next. So it's a good segue into employee benefits, which is the next thing I'll talk about.
Okay.
The employee benefits budget. The very first thing is reserve personnel. And based on the number of contracts that are up this year, I am putting in a amount of $930,000 for reserve personnel. That includes the expected amounts necessary for police, for fire, for the GEA, for the GSA, and there are a couple of individual contracts, such as myself, that are up, as well as the confidential non-supervisors unit as well. So you've got quite a bevy of groups that are up. So that's why as you go through, as we did yesterday, and you go through again today, you're going to see a lot of zeros in the proposed increases in salaries because it's all embedded in the reserve personnel.
How is it? I don't think I've ever asked this question before, but how is that determined? Is that determined on, like,
Matt and I sit down and discuss what we think we're going to be at the end of the day.
I didn't know if
with
there was an average or if there was a factor. It's just
Yeah,
literally.
we
You take a lot of different.
We look at the contracts, we look at the settlements that have taken place.
Okay.
Either
Past history.
yeah, either negotiated settlements or court settlements
Yeah.
on arbitration. And we're not gonna disclose what those numbers are.
No.
Yeah, I knew you knew that.
And there's also some realization that there's certain contracts where we're expecting to see certain adjustments. So it's not a case of just saying, oh, we expect this to be a 2% or 2.5% or
You
3%.
can't do it
There's a
over the
little
entire.
bit more that I put a little more effort into it and try to come up with where we're at.
And it's also the quantity. I mean, is this.
There's a very high amount this year based on the number of contracts that just converged at the same time.
So this is not, but it's also not typical, like every 3 or 4 years, this amount, I mean, this seems like,
I've not seen this high amount.
like it's almost
Yeah,
like,
just so many
like
at
a, like
once.
almost like a
Right.
perfect storm where all of these have kind of hit the same.
It is what happened based on a couple of things. We had a 2-year extension with the GEA. We had a 1-year extension with the police. And that all dovetailed together with the other contracts that are coming up. It does make this kind of like a perfect storm year. My intention is to take at least one of those contracts and move it off cycle. We're already talking about I'll just say a non-3-year contract with one of the groups. So that next time around, it won't be as
What's the term of all these, to go to your point, are these, and again, I probably should
Typically
have
3 years.
3 years. So
Typically,
again,
we've had one, two, fours.
hypothetically, in 3 years, we're doing the same thing, but you're gonna try to.
I'm trying to get them off cycle so they're not all the same coming up at the
Yeah,
same time,
yeah.
which puts a lot of burden on not just my department, but also Mary Jane, puts a lot of burden on our legal counsel, all happening at the same time. And this is just, like I say, this is what happened based on a couple of things that were, we did not, quite frankly, we had hoped and expected the police contract to be resolved last year.
Mhm.
So that would not be, and that's a big part of this.
Mhm.
And that it's not, because it was agreed last year instead of not coming to terms or coming to terms, which was, we were not headed for a good resolution. Looked like we were maybe headed for arbitration. When the agreement came out that we would come up with a 1-year extension with some increases that Mary Jane has already transferred in, but it pushed it off 1 year for hopefully another 3-year cycle.
The description and the clarification of this will be key during the budget season, because this will be the one thing
And it's gonna stay
of,
that way.
of probably the top 5 that the public will come out and say, well, I'm looking at the budget and I see a 766% increase.
Right, to answer one of your questions,
Justifiable, but it just.
it can never be just an average of 3 years, because we look at it based on
I
the
didn't
needs
think-
of that
I didn't think
upcoming
so.
year.
That's why I asked the
Right,
question.
right.
So I understand why we can't disclose the assumptions that you made.
Yep.
But we need to see something more in order for us to be comfortable with this. And I can see that going the same direction with taxpayers, people, and it's not about the percentage increase, because that's not relevant. It's a huge number, and the last year's number was very small. It's apples and oranges. So it's not about the percentage increase, it's about the amount. So what can we do so that we get comfortable and so that we have something to.
Without going into the actual numbers, which would, disrupt, for lack of a better word, our negotiation process. I think it's just important that I just explain things the way I just did to you. Now, you don't seem satisfied. What else can I tell you without going through?
Well, one
Well,
thing
the
is
number,
executive
the number
session.
of people,
Um,
number of people?
I don't know. I think first of all, we should see the calculation, and in fact, I think that's appropriate for executive session. So that's one suggestion. The second thing is, so the mechanics of the budget, now we have practically no increase in all the other categories because the salary increase isn't factored in, and then we have a giant increase in this one oddball row. It's kind of illogical. So how can, but I get it, I don't know of any other way of doing it. Can you, or I guess I could, calculate overall, throwing in this number, and the other salary lines that have the 0 increase,
Yes.
what's the overall increase?
So let's go, if we can, let's go.
Object budgeting here, right, which is take the payroll from all of the departments,
Mhm,
come up with a number, current number, what's approved in 2025. all right? And then you layer in this, now you get,
Yep.
now you're backing out to a percentage.
So let's go, excuse me 1 second. Let's go back then on your board packs, if you've got them. Let's go back to this very top where I've got the salaries. Okay, if you want to open up that document. Okay, and there's some changes that were caught yesterday, and I'm sure there'll be some more changes that are caught today that have to be made, especially this will go up based on some of the discussion we had with the departments of health and planning and zoning yesterday with some of the asks that are not on this list. But if you scroll right to the very bottom, page 32 or something like that, you can see, I don't know why that came up the way it did there on the bottom, but
That's special funds anyway, so it doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
so the general fund is currently showing a 9% increase in salaries with that $930,000 number right above it.
Okay,
You see where I'm at?
yep, I do.
Okay, so the change without even going through negotiations, your full-time salaries are up 3.65%, just based on what's already in existing contracts already.
Mhm.
And a couple of people that have been proposed that are in this budget.
Yeah.
And there will be more based on yesterday's discussion. Part-time is up 6.6%. The secretaries, 16%, mostly because of the increase that I said I'm proposing from $20 to $21 an hour. plus there's a couple of ones that went up more than that.
But that's the smallest
Yeah,
subsection
yeah.
of the salaries.
The other is 11%, that almost 12%. That includes overtime, includes stipends, includes replacements, things like that. And then there's your reserve for personnel, which has got that big number showing a total in overall salaries,
Mhm.
9% right now.
All right.
And we can provide updates, because we do, to this spreadsheet.
Yeah.
As changes are made through this board, through the process, we update this so that we're accurately
Right.
putting in our budgets
Yeah,
the
yeah.
decisions that are made, so we can provide updates to you regularly.
Mhm.
And based on yesterday's discussion, like I said, I was a little bit surprised at some of the things that were brought up that I didn't realize were gonna be put into this budget. Some of them, as you heard, want to be put in before the budget. I will have to adjust this, which will increase this number somewhat by adding a couple of new positions if they are indeed approved.
I think to Sue's,
But- oh.
no, I was just gonna say to Sue's point, I think, and Mary Jane, you alluded to it, quantity, like the number, of departments, the number of organizations, the number of people that are affected by this might be something that can be used to say, out of the town employees, 42% of them are gonna be seeing some level of reserve for personnel. Something that the
I'm sure
gravity
that's
of it.
helpful. Yeah,
You-
I think it's helpful. but
Oh, yeah,
For the people who want to dig in and understand, it's not going to be satisfactory.
no, of course not, but the only satisfaction would be being part of the negotiation. I mean, you really
Well-
can't, there's nothing too much more you can do except for, I think, just indicating the sheer amount of everything coming together this year.
Okay. All right.
But I do agree, a little bit more justification would be great. It's just, how do you do that? That's.
Even something like, and I think I kind of have some ideas of how we might go about doing it, but saying that 9.06 increase is subtract out the new positions, the minimum wage thing, the secretaries, all those things that we've mentioned, and be able to see what the overall sort of general wage increase percent outside of those things is. I mean, I don't know if that's something that we're uncomfortable with for negotiating purposes, but I mean, anybody with a calculator could sort of pull that out if they wanted to. So I
We
don't
can just
know.
put some different functions in the spreadsheet to pull out just
Probably
certain
could,
things,
yeah. Yeah.
or to take this, make just a separate one that only includes those without the, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
just to be fair,
yeah.
the reserve for personnel also includes small amounts, but there's amounts in there for midterm adjustments, which we've made a couple this year. The FICA is rolled up in there. But yeah, it's
Oh, that's a good point.
Right, we have
it's a-
insurance,
it's a-
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
it's a determination to make sure we have enough money to be able to settle contracts.
Mhm.
Because if we settle a contract and there's not enough money in the budget, we have to either come back to ask the boards for pulling money from undesignated fund balance, which is
Yeah.
never the intent. And
Which
we-
goes back to Charles's question when I came to the board to make adjustments for this year, and your question was, is this
Is it
more
enough?
than you had asked for in the budget? We don't ever
Right.
wanna have to do that.
Sure, but step one is getting the budget passed.
I understand, no, I understand, but that's the
Yeah.
reasoning, behind making
Yeah.
sure we have enough in there.
And this
Yeah.
in reserve personnel is not just wages.
It's almost all wages. I mean,
Almost all.
yeah, it's
Okay,
wages.
so it's not enough that you could
FICA.
say that.
No,
those
Yeah.
are in
wa-
that.
wages and FICA, that's really what it is.
And FICA,
It's
okay.
wages and
Okay.
FICA.
Fair enough.
To make sure there's enough money, once we settle contracts and increase people's wages, that Mary Jane has enough to pay the taxes to go with it. We've always included the FICA in the reserve for personnel. Like I said, we've got, a lot of contracts out there, and there are also, along with those contracts, there will be, I can, already anticipate certain adjustments in some of those contracts, as well as I said, you've got a couple of new positions that you already have heard from. You're gonna hear from the chief in a few minutes. There's other proposed positions in there that are leading to this high number. Now, whether, you know, when you go through deliberations where you decide to approve or not approve, we'll make the adjustments as we go along.
I think to Susan's point, at the very least, we gotta itemize out new positions like, all those exceptions from what the actual potential increase we are anticipating. I mean, that 9% number is just going to be a gigantic red flag, which I personally couldn't explain at this point.
What's the, I mean, I can do that by pulling out the new positions, I can do that, but it's, by pulling out new positions, it's still gonna be a number. You're gonna still have the new
But for the
positions
contract,
separate.
whether it be an extension of a contract or whatever, every year there is an increase. Okay, and that generally an increase. And this number, you know, because of the way it was set up and then they weren't spelled out in each department. You know, this point, this number, like I said, I couldn't explain it at this point in time. And I think we ought to be able, or at least not us explain it, but at least understand it so that. 100%.
Is there a
Make sure your
timeline?
forecast just-
Is there a
Sure.
timeline on negotiations? Have we begun on anything?
We've
Is there an-
begun one negotiation last week. We have not begun the other three major ones as of yet. All the contracts expire June 30th. I am hopeful that everyone's contract will resolve by June 30th. But to have it done before the budget referendum or
Oh,
before
yeah, I
budget
didn't expect
hearings
that.
is unrealistic.
Yeah, no, I didn't expect that. I just wondered if we'd begun or what we were looking at for a time.
So your forecasts all based on what the contracts were historically, so you just say, hey, if we extended out the increases we've been giving them each year, that's the number you arrived at?
In some cases, the answer is yes, in some cases, no. Like I said, Jonathan, I am anticipating discussions with some of the groups. I'm anticipating certain requests. They're not all gonna be met, but I think we're gonna come somewhere in between. And I've tried to come up with that in between where I feel it's gonna be appropriate, fair, and also expectation wise. If I just plug in a 2% or 2.5% or something like that, we're gonna be way low when it comes time to, with step increases, with promotions in certain departments, and other requests that come through, and that get approved in these contracts. It's gonna be, it wouldn't be enough.
Can you give us that famous sheet you've given us in the past that's got all the bargaining groups and, you know, what their current contract?
That's what we're looking at. It's on your board
Oh,
packet.
it's on here already, sorry. Haven't gone to that one yet. Okay,
Salaries at the top.
Salary.
that helps understand a little bit.
So I. I'm not sure if this is what he's asking for. This is the list,
Yeah, I,
big list of all the salaries.
Yeah.
if that's not what you're looking for, Jonathan, I apologize if it's something else, because
Yeah, you thinking of a list of the contracts?
Yeah,
basically.
something that has all the
No.
Oh,
bargaining.
the
groups.
contracts and the recent, yeah, I haven't updated that in a while. I'll have to work on that for you. I'll get it to you.
Yeah,
oh, I have it in our official statements. Our official statements have that information.
Okay, that's even better.
So, yeah, I have to keep track of that. It's at least back from August when I went out for debt. So it would be, yeah, so not that it's gonna change the overall need of what are these line items in, but I do have 177,000 set aside in reserved fund balance from other years that we put money aside. So that would help alleviate the $900,000 burden. Although the bottom line really would be the same, because it's just a matter of what pot is coming in, but budgetarily, there's 177 that we already have set aside, so that would help that number. But again, not the percentage, because it's just where the money's coming from. So as we deliberate the budgets, we can certainly utilize some or all of that reserve.
And it's a separate reserve from what we call the undesignated fund balance.
Correct, as we, right, when there, so what happens is we put this money aside for reserve for personnel, and when we have funding left over, we often save that money for the next year to help alleviate it, which is what I'm
Sure.
talking about today. We like to show what the full amount would be so that you have an idea of really what the true number is, but then given the option to utilize this funding.
Are we okay to move on?
Got that?
All right, some of the employee benefits. Mitch?
Okay, back to employee benefits. The pension number, Mary Jane has had preliminary discussion with our actuary. We don't have the final figures yet. We're pretty close. We believe these will be them or very close to them. Looking at a slight decrease in our pension costs for next year.
I just want to note that on board pack, there's a breakdown of the retirement
Yes.
to show all of the detail behind the number.
Do you want to go to that?
If there's any questions regarding.
Next couple things are in the same, there's no change to the FICA. We're showing a 6.5% increase at this point for that. Unemployment up substantially. We have been hit very hard this year on unemployment, and we were definitely under budgeted this year. We've had a couple of separations of employment from people who walk out of here with good salary, don't necessarily get a position right away, and we are self-funded for unemployment, so I've increased that substantially from 10,000 to 32,000 going next year. Retirement sick leave, based on those that are still eligible for retirement sick leave, increasing that from 10,000 to 40,000. Medical insurance, there's a big increase there, and we've had preliminary discussions with our advisor, Joe Spurgeon from Lindbergh and Ripple. Mary Jane reports to the boards every month, so it shouldn't be a huge surprise that we've been running ahead of our projections all year. And it looks like that's going to continue. We do have a meeting scheduled, a joint meeting, end of this month.
The
right?
28th at 6 p.m.
Thank you. We did the Board of Finance, Board of
Board of
Selectmen,
Education.
and Board of Education with Joe to discuss substantial increases we are seeing in our medical costs. And if there's other ways we can look at that than what we've looked at already. It's somewhat disheartening because we made a lot of efforts in the last couple of years. In fact, the employees are very much aware of this because the last 2 years we've had pretty much a flat, if not a little bit of a decrease in our medical costs. We've been way ahead of the curve for the last couple of years, and this year just seems to have caught up with us. I'm not sure we can
It's all
explain why.
claims, it's all claims driven. You've seen from the numbers that I've reported each month, our claims are so much higher the first quarter of this year than we've seen ever. And because we're self-funded, that all ties into what we're paying. But I said Joe Spurgeon will be in that meeting so that all the boards can digest and ask questions and hopefully have takeaways that they can talk to taxpayers as to this number. So
Right, and it should come as no surprise that there've already been some discussions about the utilization of the excess funds in the medical reserve account to apply with this. This may be one of those rainy day years that we need to take a look at.
so I
a
will.
Substantial appropriation.
So if you look at the detail of the medical fund at our meeting, we did Linda Trudeau on behalf of the Board of Education and me on behalf of you have recommended $750,000 be applied to the medical fund that is already built into this number. So if you look at the backup for the medical fund that I put on there, we've taken a $750,000 out of surplus. We were cautious as to how much we were recommending to come out, because as you know, the following year that represents a revenue shortfall for us, so to speak, because if the following year is just as high and we take no money out of the fund balance, our numbers are still going up. So we were reluctant to recommend anything higher. That's from our standpoint. Obviously, it is up to the three boards to determine what that number should be or could be. But our recommendation is 750. It's already reflected in this number.
So I guess it's hard to tell if this is a rainy day year, so to speak, as the first selectman mentioned, but this is gonna be our kind of regular kind of medical costs going
We
forward.
don't know if it's an anomaly
That's kind
or,
of different too.
Yeah.
What, is there anything that makes us think it's an anomaly, like a strangely high year?
it's really so hard
Yeah.
for us to tell, you know, we're not looking at who, what, you know, that's not our purview to be reviewing that, so, all we have is data to show, that it is
So all we
continuing
have is
month after
historical.
month. Yeah, it's continuing month after month, unfortunately.
Part of me thinks, you know, what else are we gonna use it for? You know, why would we maintain a surplus if not for some kind of circumstance like this? But I think once that you said that you thought it would be prudent to have at least 3 months. right?
We need at least 3 months in there, which is, you know, we have a little bit more than that. That's why we took out the 750. On the chance that next year, we might be looking at this same thing. That was in the back of our head to say, okay, you know, this year we're gonna have a deficit, so it's gonna cut into that number already. Unless something happens miraculously the second half of the year. So that all played into our decision for the 750.
Okay, we haven't changed anything with medical either, right? It's
No.
the same as it was last year.
Other than the,
Firefighters.
Yeah.
That's the reason for the increase. It's the firefighters. If you go line by line through the, if you look on the medical benefits budget sheet at the top section, which is the breakdown that shows our $500,000 increase, it's all, it would be a decrease if not. for that.
but it's really not, because the medical budget already takes into account that they're not in it.
Right.
You know, so the medical budget would have been higher if we kept the firemen even
Right.
higher,
But last year it was zero for that.
because it's a new program.
It's a new program, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, right. Okay, I got it.
So
So
it's really just a
okay.
shift of the money, Susan.
Okay,
So
yeah.
we've already taken into account in the
Yeah.
in our self-funded.
The reason that we, yeah, okay. I
Right,
get
so
it.
it's just a shift.
Okay.
You gotta kind of put those two numbers together, that's.
Do you guys see where I'm?
I see what you're looking at, and I understand why you're making that.
It's a
No, I
good
get
question,
it.
I'm glad that we could answer
Yes,
that, but.
The other numbers would have been higher.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
Maybe not like one for one, but
Mhm.
it would have been, so we've taken those numbers out. And after this first year, when we have a really clear picture, maybe next year, 27 budget might have a little bit more, you know,
Yeah.
finalizing those numbers, but it's already, you know, somewhat taken into account.
Yeah, it does get a little tricky with the firefighters being taken out of the anthem situation, but as Mary Jane explained, she's accounted for that, you know, on both sides of the equation, so to speak.
I know you said that we may not be able to do this, but we have now removed a portion of our risk when we move the firefighter somewhere else, because that number is now fixed.
Right,
Yeah.
that's why I said
So
the
it'd be
following
nice to
year.
understand what portion of the increase would have been attributable to the experiences that were had relative to those employees who are no longer going to be in the base.
Yeah.
And trying to back that out, we can't do, we do it at a macro level, I understand. we do
Right,
at a
we're doing it
macro
at this level up here.
level. So-
Yeah, because we're really basing it on claims. Those claims are in there, you know. But
Okay, back to my.
do you have another question, Susan?
No.
Okay.
Can you just circle back to retirement sick leave that went up?
Yep.
pretty significantly, and besides just, you know,
It's,
mentioning it.
it's because, well, that's fine. There are certain employees, and the number is continuing to go down each year as people do retire, that are still eligible for retirement sick leave payout. And what's happening is, the projections, and this is once again just a projection of those who are expected to retire in the next year. who are eligible for retired sick leave. I've calculated what they're entitled to and come up with, an amount that, basically, would increase what we're at. That's all.
Yeah, again, there are funds set aside for retirement sick leave that we have consistently kept some money in the budget, just, for consistency's sake in budgeting. But again, another line item where we could pull funds from money set aside.
I'm still curious, you just mentioned that the number of people that are eligible go down each year, so why the?
Because the number of people that are reaching age 65 or closer to retirement has increased.
Oh, I got you.
Aging
A lot of
population,
people
yeah.
retiring. Okay, so
Potential.
generally speaking, it's
Potential.
going down, but
Yeah,
this
the
year.
total numbers,
Number of
wait,
people.
the total, not just people, over the years that I've tracked this, the total potential obligation, think of it as an OPEB fund kind of thing, and the total potential obligation to the town has been decreasing. Okay, it's just that we've reached the point where a lot of the people who've been in the system for a long time have reached
It's
this
kind of a bump this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have consistently pulled from the fund balance to cover those expenses as well as we go through our budget process and we need some funding again, just like the reserve for personnel, there's funding there set
For
aside.
this purpose.
Correct.
For this purpose.
For this
I
specific
can fully
purpose.
anticipate we're gonna tap into that this year.
But again, we like to
But
provide.
in
the
order to
current-
get a better understanding, Mitch has a spreadsheet that
Yep.
he tracks by contract, based on what's in the contract, who's left that's entitled to retirement sick leave. And he's got a document that details that. And what he looks at is every year, okay, who do we think is gonna be going out this year?
I'm right on some, wrong on others. It's just the way it is. But
No, but I get
sometimes
it.
if somebody retires, I didn't expect, so it kind of evens itself out.
And we have traditionally, I wouldn't say overfunded it, but we've realistically looked and said, okay, we should put some money aside because these folks are gonna go this year. And when it is not materialized or not realized, then it falls to the fund balance,
Right.
which allows us to move some of that to years in the future where we thought they were gonna be expended in previous years. So, Mitch, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with everybody, that document, is that?
I think you and I should have a discussion offline about that first.
But it's a finite number
But
of
it's,
people,
yeah, but yeah, fine number of
could be-
people.
At some point,
new hires coming in or not.
the point is, at some point, this line goes away. At some point.
Will we have some contracts that might have it?
You and I will not be on the boards when that happens. We've got a ways to go.
Fair enough.
All right, moving along, life insurance, is pretty close to the same. It's going up a bit, mostly because of the fact that we anticipate a few additional employees, otherwise it'd be pretty close to the same. Employee assistance program, we should be able to hold the same. And then the, long-term disability insurance. This is a, program that we have instituted, with our police and firefighters who are not on pension. The town has picked up an expense on that, and the anticipation is it's gonna go up to about 15. We're really close this year. I think we may be a little bit over budget this year, so I have put that up a bit. But that line's gonna continue to increase, as more people are on a defined contribution plan versus defined benefit plan. And the waste transportation reimbursement, Mary Jane has calculated.
But I kept it flat again. That's going to change based on salaries, increases to salaries. The increase in the medical, we don't know what that number is exactly yet for the employees. So that reduction to this budget will most likely be higher than that number in the final analysis.
All right.
Any other questions on employee benefits?
I think we've worked through
Okay, enough on that. We'll move on to one more for me is insurance. So we're looking at a bit of an increase potentially. These are potential numbers. Hopefully, as this budget process goes on, we'll get closer to finalized numbers. But for right now, we've showing about a 5.4% increase in workers' comp and about a 6% increase in the LAP, the liability, auto, and property insurances. Those are the two biggest ones that we have. The crime fiduciary liability, that's lumped into a couple separate policies. It's just a $1,000 increase. Basically, the biggest part of this is our fiduciary liability. And as our pension plan increases in value, so does the cost of insuring it. So that's mostly where the increases come from each year into that particular insurance line. Our miscellaneous insurance is actually going down. I'm showing a $25,000 decrease there. We've gotten some much better rates, both a little bit on the cyber as well as the pollution control. Our agent, Acrisure, formerly HD Seeger, went out and quoted these, and we got a much better rate going forward. So there's a good decrease there in that line. The reimbursements are things that Mary Jane can determine for me. The claim deductibles, I'm putting in a little bit less. It would make a little decrease this year. We've had less claims, knock on wood. On that, our insurance consultant, we expect to be the same. And as I said, the reimbursements are Mary Jane. The total increase we're showing right now is 2.1% in that budget.
Mitch, quick question on
Yep.
fiduciary liability.
Yep.
A number of expenses related to our pension are covered by the pension itself. That fiduciary liability is not one of those.
It's
things
not one of
that's
those.
Not covered.
It's not, I guess the answer to that, Matt, is this has always been a line item that we have absorbed as part of our general budget, and I've never requested otherwise.
Let's take a look at that.
Sure. And we look into it.
We, we charge back, the fiducians,
Yeah.
expenses and a series of other expenses to the plan.
It's probably more of a legal question, but I think Mary Jane and I can look into that and get some answers on that.
We've kind of
Absolutely.
looked into that already, so.
Yeah. Well, the double will be the details on the
Right.
pension contract.
Yep.
Pension document, or respective pension document.
I was curious, we've had the cyber insurance only for a little while, but we've never made any kind of claim, right? And then, does anybody know how it would
We'll
work?
talk to West Haven. They got an issue right now.
Second time around,
Ha-
West
yeah.
Haven does.
How would it work if for instance, if someone hacked the town website or something, would we get some reimbursement per day until it's up, or?
Something we can talk offline about, Jonathan. We try not to,
We do not talk about the details of
Let it-
cyber.
what we have.
Coverage levels, et cetera. That could be something we do in executive session.
But it's a protection we do need.
Everyone needs on.
Any other questions?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mitch. All right, so that's 12 o'clock. We're done, right? That was our 12 o'clock hour. Hamburger. Good. All right, Youth and Family Services. Lynn, come on down.
Every time of the year.
I got you beat on that one.
You told me negotiating the GSA contract was your favorite time of year.
That's my second favorite, because I get to go toe to toe with you, Mitch.
I know.
Okay,
Good morning. Lynn.
good morning, everyone. Put the glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. All right, we'll start with the cold hard numbers for my overall budget. Would have been pretty flat, except for full-time salaries. We saw the last of the ARPA money last year, so that put an extra $35,000 into my full-time salaries. Everything else, as you can see, is pretty flat. 3 or 4 things that have gone up slightly are just cost of things going up. So the total budget is $842,460, offset by projected revenue of $199,000, which gives a cost to the town of $643,460. So that's the budget.
Excuse me one second, Lynn.
Yes.
Just to answer questions that came up before, we're just talking about salaries. Lynn just reminded me of something that we should also keep in mind in looking at that total salaries budget, especially the full-time salaries.
I was getting to
Is
that.
that, no, excuse me, it was the fact that she mentioned the ARPA funds disappearing
Oh, okay,
as-
okay.
has shown some of the increases, that you wouldn't normally see. There'd be a lot more zeros, as Linda's pointed out in her situation. She's showing over 5% increase in salaries, which really isn't an increase in salaries as much as a decrease in ARPA funds.
Right, thank you, Mitch.
That's a good point. We'll have
Yeah.
to keep that as part of our analysis.
Which department was that? you were
It's
saying?
youth and family.
Yeah, me.
Oh,
No,
okay.
but
So yesterday, Mike, you were online, I think, we talked about several, excuse me.
There were several other
There were
departments?
several other departments. who
That's
looked
all I
at-
need to know. I didn't know, I thought
Health,
maybe you
Yeah.
mentioned
right,
one.
health is one.
6 or 7 departments that
Yeah.
have ARPA money that
Will,
ended December 31st.
Do we see that in the
2024.
salary schedule?
Yes.
It's in
You
the
will
salary
see that.
schedule, yeah.
Yes.
So just to clarify, we were using ARPA money to pay permanent salaries?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm gonna get to the backup for that in a second. Okay, so the budget would have been pretty flat except for that. Now, when we're talking about offsetting this budget, besides the revenue that we bring in, which was considerable last year, we write a lot of grants. So to offset the full-time salaries, we get around almost $23,000 from DCF every year. That offsets my salary. That's already built into this. We also get, for our juvenile review board, we have a clinician who's also a case manager for our JRB cases. And last year we had $15,000 that offset that. That's also built into this amount. So if we didn't have those, the full-time salary line item would be much higher. But for all of the programs that we offer, we wouldn't be able to offer maybe a third of what we offer because of the grants that we bring in. So my staff does write a lot of grants. So if you take those 2 grants and everything else that we wrote last year, we brought in $87,000 in grants.
Purely salary offset?
No, not just the 2 things, the 2 things that I just mentioned,
Okay.
and a third, which is our summer camp counselors, that is of no cost to the town at all, because last year we received $19,000 from Workforce Alliance. That pays for our total camp salaries. The other stuff, a little bit comes out of my budget. We write other grants. Our theater program, which is very, very big, we received almost $17,000 in grants to run that. We wouldn't be able to run that if we didn't have those grants that we write. We do opioid grants. We have, that's besides the opioid money that we have. We also write other grants for that. We write grants for suicide prevention. And we get $5,000 for our local prevention council. So $87,000 in grants is a lot of money.
Lynn, do you write those grants or do you have somebody who does it?
We all do as a team. So I write some, our Carol Regan, who's our assistant director, writes some, Mike Costello writes some. He's mainly in charge of the theater program and the camp program. So that's a lot of money that comes in. So I've never mentioned that before, but I thought it was important to mention how much extra money comes in, and we would not be able to run those programs if we didn't do that. So then some other numbers that you may have got, that you probably did get in your packets. On our clinical and prevention services, we had 3,923 appointments over the last fiscal year. Referrals come from parents, police, schools. We saw and helped, whether clinically or with prevention programs, 327 children. We continue to be one of the biggest youth service bureaus in the state. Most of them are 1 or 2 man teams. So we do run a lot of programs. We're pretty heavily loaded. We saw 644 participants in individual programs, and then our one-time events, which could be in collaboration with other town agencies, other town departments. We reached over 10,000 people in town. That's considerable. The collaboration that we do with the police, and I'll get to the SWAT program at the end, because I have some slides that I want to share screen with. Our CDCP program, where that's our call outs, that decreased, and the reason is because some things are getting folded into our social work, our police social worker. We still referred 74 cases to our domestic violence home intervention program. We had 23 JRB cases. And SWAP I'll get to in a little bit, because that's significant. our history of appointments to date. Last year we saw over 3,700 appointments. We had over 3,700 clinical appointments. To date, today, or maybe as of Friday, we're at almost 1,900. So that means halfway through the year, we're going to hit about the same number at the end of the year. Tracy, if you could go to the swap share screen, the first slide. Here she comes. Go to the one that says number of cases. It's near the end. Yep. So the number of cases. So when we first did this and we had just a part-time person, 10 hours a week, started out as an intern. And, so for 14 months, we had 133 cases. That's the blue bar. And then this past year, which was a little difficult to figure out because half of the year she was part-time, 10 hours, and then she became full-time July 1st, is 137 cases. That's the red bar. So by next year, when she's full-time the whole year, I'm going to guess, and I think I'll be accurate, that red bar is going to be a lot higher because some of those numbers were from part-time hours. So in total, over the last 2.5 years, we've helped out 270 people for the social work program in the police department. Tracy, could you go to the next one, right next to it, referral source by year? So if you look at the referral source by year, we had ride-alongs or roll call. So during those first 14 months, those are the red bars. 21.8% were ride-alongs as compared to now, which are 36% are ride-alongs. That's a social worker is in the police car with the cop going out to calls. And for roll call, sitting there and just getting referrals from roll call, during that first period, that's the red bar, 78.2%, and currently the year we just ended, 64%. So the roll call numbers are going down because the ride-alongs are going up. So that's working. We want to catch them while they're hot, so to speak. Tracy, could you go to the last one, outcomes? So if you look at the outcomes, the red bar, you want that to be smaller than your green bar, right? So we're going to start at the bottom. Accepted resources. So everybody that we hit 270 people during this past year, 74.8% accepted resources, as opposed to that first 14 months when it was just 61.7%. People who declined resources, you want that number to be much smaller, which it is. So during our pilot program or our part-time program, it was 12.8%. And currently it's at 4.8% declining services. So we have a lot more people accepting services. People that we couldn't reach, sometimes it's a little difficult to reach them after the ride-along or the roll call. That also is going down though, because she can spend more time trying to reach people, almost 22% and 17% currently. And then the people that we have no information for, you expect that will go down as well because she's more present. So only 1.9% of the people were reached. And currently we have cases still open. Most cases are closed, so that all the other green bars, the bottom green bar is cases that are closed. So they were able to get referred out to services or we give them services. And right now there's only 1.1% of cases still open. So you want them closed as quickly as possible so that, you don't want that one person to be overwhelmed. So that's our SWAP program, very successful. We're very grateful that it's a permanent position. That's it for me.
Lynn, thank you very much for the detail here. One point I think that we need to talk a little bit about is, and Jonathan brought it up, the ARPA funding.
Yes.
That expired. We gradually have been weaning them off over time.
Yeah.
The analysis that we had discussed doing when the ARPA funds expired was going to be, do we still need the resources that the ARPA funds allowed us to put in place and gradually wean ourselves off of in terms of the funding? And I think your caseload, that's
Emphatically, yes.
well, and why? What's the
Well,
case?
so, I've mentioned this at past budget presentations, our normal caseload before COVID was 30, 40, maybe 50 was considered high. We're running an average of 97 a month. So we never go below 95 clients a month clinical, which is huge. We often hit 100. I think we're at 99 right now currently as of today. That's and it's an abnormal caseload for the number of staff that I have, and people may think that we have a lot of staff. The only reason that we can handle everybody medically necessary and responsibly is that I have 5 social work interns. So if I didn't have those interns, we would have to deny people services. And that is something that ethically, morally, I just cannot do, because everybody around us, whether it's the shoreline or the Greater New Haven area, everybody still has waiting lists. And so when your kid's in trouble and you call, you don't want to be told, I can't see them for another month. So we see them, they make a referral, within 7 days, they're in with us. So only because I have 4 social work interns, Mike has an intern for other programming. So, it just adds to the grant numbers that I presented. We do a lot with what we have because we bring in a lot as well.
Any questions, Ron?
A couple of questions. I presume you're doing such a great job, and the word has got out that more people, this is self-sustaining, more people are going, it's no longer COVID directly related.
No.
And the other half of that question is, though, without being specific at all, just general, are they less acute? You're just broadening to a wider audience?
They're more acute.
And
The reasons why, don't know. I mean, the pressures of their environments, the pressures that we all have are multiplied with the children. Anxiety is up through the roof. Suicidal ideation with young kids. I mean, that's heartbreaking.
it kind of came out yesterday that we found that we're still paying for COVID.
We will continue to pay for
And-
COVID for a long time
Yeah.
because the PTSD won't go
The,
away.
The disruptions.
Yeah.
This isn't a question for you, but this is something that came up yesterday, and you've reminded me of it again. I know we're not looking at P&Ls here, we're just looking at budgets. But is there a way to break out offsets from grants? Now, the money that you're mentioning for,
Yeah.
I'm just asking you specifically, you happen to be here, but I could have asked this yesterday. The offsets, the money's in hand for the upcoming year, this budget. It's not money that's been applied for. Right?
The numbers that I gave you were from the last fiscal year.
Okay.
They're going to be very similar for this fiscal
Right.
year.
So but grants are, they're not 100% sure.
No, I mean, I get $16,720 from the Connecticut Youth Services Association for the Juvenile Review Board. That could be 10 next year or nothing at all.
Okay, so it's less a question for you than for.
Yeah.
For Mary Jane. Is there a way to break out the full, in this case, full salary number and then subtract the offset?
Well, yes, because I have to say, when I do the FICA, when I figure out FICA.
Right.
So we're gonna use round numbers, so say she has $100,000 budget and 20 is grants, so we're only budgeting 80.
Yeah.
I still have to pay
Right.
FICA for 100.
Right.
So I have
You
that
have the gross.
grant number
Right.
already,
Right.
in the calculation, so
Right.
we can show that. So one grant that we don't have, because we're not sure if we get it, JRB is not in the numbers.
Yes, it is.
These are numbers this year, wasn't it?
Oh, last
It
year,
wasn't
last
in
year,
the-
okay, I
Wasn't
thought
in
it
last
wasn't in
year.
last year,
Right.
so we added it for this year, okay.
Because
Yeah,
when we get to this point, we hear someone say, here's the number, but there's an offset in there.
Mhm.
I'm not looking, I don't see the offset. It'd be marvelous to see. If we can-
I already built in the
Well,
offset
you
for
would
mine.
see
In my
that-
salary sheets.
Yeah.
Again, in
Yeah.
those salary
Yeah.
sheets, you'll
My
see
salary
those
sheets are-
grants.
Yeah.
listed there. So under Youth and Family Services, you're
Yeah.
gonna see all the people's names that work, and then minus for a grant.
All
Right,
right, so it's
Yeah.
in two places.
yeah,
Right, yeah, so
Yeah.
you will see that, you won't, so you'll see the net.
That's what I'm saying. It would be lovely to break it out on there. So I know it's built up.
Yeah. We
It'd
can
be lovely.
manipulate spreadsheets to do whatever you'd like to see, so it sounds like we're having one breakout session just for that.
yeah.
You know, I hate to complicate things, but
But I guess the bottom line is the detail
this is built.
is in
It's-
those
it's-
sheets
it's
that you
back
have
there
on,
somewhere.
that you have.
Very good, thanks.
You go back to the salary sheets and look up Youth and Family Services, which is on page 29. You can see,
You think I'm clever enough to do it?
I do, I don't think, I know you're clever enough to do it. But just to reiterate what I was saying before, if you should, each of her employees are all called out, their individual salaries, and each one of them has zero change because they're either in GSA or GEA. And it also shows against that, the offsets. Last year, we had an offset for ARPA and DCF. This year is an offset for DCF and JRB. So, like I said, the ARPA one is gone, and that's creating a big gap because that was the largest one.
Right, for
Right.
Youth and Family Services, that was our largest chunk
Mhm.
of ARPA.
52,000 plus, yeah.
Right, it was twice that the year before. If you remember this, in the current year, we cut it in half because we had to end December 31st. So her budget was adjusted 50% in the current year and the other 50% this year.
Right, right. I have one more point about revenue.
Sure.
So last year when I was here, I said, please don't raise my revenue without talking to me, and you did it anyway. And I almost had a heart attack when I saw that final number. So we had, I know we bring in a lot, but our revenue goal last year was 174,000, and we brought in $250,000. That could change on a dime. So you raise it to 199, which means that now I have one person doing administrative duties and billing, where billing is taking up probably 90% of her time. Because at 199,000, that means we have to go after every single penny diligently every day, which we do anyway, but it's a high number, which means that if I lost a clinician tomorrow, or if I had less interns, I'm not gonna meet that number. So please, please, please don't raise my revenue projection this coming
You don't
year.
want to just round it to 200.
No, please don't. I'll come after you.
Uh-oh.
And when we present revenue, and I did my revenue yesterday, it's all
Yeah,
maybes.
It's
All-
maybes, right.
All
Wait,
of the revenue.
but see, I feel bad if I don't
You
meet
said
it,
it out
right?
loud.
I
Nobody
know.
says it out loud.
No.
Yeah, or I'll say, you don't have to guess what I'm thinking.
Your actual was
$251,000.
Okay.
But that's, that's not such a great thing when you think about how we came
Yeah,
to
I
that
say,
number.
I say that every time, don't I? I always say that, it's not a good reason, right? I say that at almost every meeting. I don't like that
No.
number because of what it represents. That's what I
Right.
tell them at the
Yeah.
Board of Finance.
Yeah.
Linda,
So,
Can I ask you about your swap program? just
Sure.
A little bit? You were showing us the cases. I was curious, do you make a case every time there's a ride along?
Yes.
Incident?
yes, so what I failed to bring up, it slipped my mind, is that we acquired a software program. It's called Casebook. It's just case management, because I couldn't mix those cases with my electronic health records, which is clinical. And so now every person that comes in, and we've entered everyone from day one, since when we started the pilot, which is where we got the number for 270. Everybody goes in there with their demographic information, where we referred them to, what services they received. So everybody's accounted for.
So your incidents with swap or your cases will just go up with every police incident that
Yes,
someone's on a ride on?
that's right along, or a case that she gets in roll call.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the difference between the roll call and the ride along? Sorry, I'm not
So
sure I
roll call,
understood
she's sitting at the police department, is roll call, the police do that at every,
that. Yep.
right, every shift
And then
change?
they say they have a case for you?
Yep,
Oh, okay.
they'll, for Jordan, who's sitting there as the social worker,
So maybe someone contacted them directly?
yep,
Okay.
yep.
And they're passing it along? to you.
they're passing it along. Somebody came in, they had to write a police report, she gets handed the police report, and right along, she's in the police car, during the shift.
The expectation of her being on every ride along is impossible.
Right.
There are 21 shifts you gotta cover
Yeah.
during
Yeah.
a week, and she's only working.
35 hours, yeah.
45.
Yeah.
35. So,
Yeah.
anything else?
Okay,
Thank you
all
very
right,
much.
you're welcome.
Where's Chris?
All right. Police department, are they hanging out?
He was here, so he must just be,
Hang on the wall, I think.
Stepped
making
away
some
on
phone,
police
making
business.
some
I
phone
assume.
calls in the other room.
Reloading.
Is Chris out there?
By the way,
Yeah, Darlene went to get him.
my question about the offsets, it's not just related to salaries, like, for example, fire get grant for. Perfect.
There's very few offsets for grants within the general budget. Typically, a grant that the police, say the police department got a grant for a vehicle.
Yeah.
That would be run through our grant fund. So we have a separate fund that those things are done through. The only time you really see it in the general fund is if it does affect salaries
Right.
that are budgeted through there.
All right. Good morning, Chief. Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Morning, folks. How we doing?
All right. I know time is precious, so I appreciate everybody's time this morning. I'm going to try to be concise. So what I want to do is just with the budget presentation, I'm going to start in the non-salary line items. That's a lot more straightforward. There's a couple of asks for personnel that I want to give more time to if there's any questions. So just leading off with the non-salary side of our operating budget, there's an overall increase there of $43,000 roughly. A vast majority of that, about 65% of that, is actually under utilities, in consideration of the rising costs of electricity to run our operation. And that number is also increased this year because we did have a cut last year during the budget process. There was a cut that brought our budget down under that line item. So that did increase the percentage and what the increase is for this year there. A lot of the vendors that we reached out to for various services that we do obtain at the police department to run our operation, a lot of them, the standard answer was a 5% increase. Did what I could across the board to try to make cuts where I could so that we didn't absorb that entirely in every single location where we did have to go up 5%. But you'll see there's some pretty decent increases in each of the lines, but it's I generally tried to keep it under 5% where I could. Gasoline, you're going to see that there's a reduction there of about 6,000. That's actually helped by a couple things. We moved to hybrid. We're trying to move to hybrid vehicles, so we have more hybrid vehicles on the fleet, which has helped lower the amount of gasoline that we're using on an annual basis, which I appreciate the assistance last fiscal year with pushing that through. So we currently have 8 vehicles in our fleet right now that are hybrid, and we're hoping to get to as close to 100% of our vehicles as we can over the next several years. The other factor there under gasoline to help with that reduction was that the manner in which the town is going to be purchasing out the gasoline is going to change a little bit. So for us, what that means is towards the end of the fiscal year, we're not going to get stuck with the premium pricing that we often get stuck with once the town goes over the contracted amount for gasoline. So our cost should stay fairly consistent throughout the year. So, which I'm very appreciative of that because it was certainly something that come May and June, you get the higher bills by about $1,500 more a bill. Certainly something that you don't like to see. So very appreciative of the process change there. Under operating supplies and training and development, you're going to see that there's some pretty substantial movement there. What I did was under training and development, I moved several items that were under that line into the operating line. Conceptually, that's just what made more sense to me to have, particularly items that are utilized for our less lethal weapon programs. So our tasers, pepper spray, things like that. I moved that into operating because it's not just a training it's not just a training item that we're buying. It's for our actual police operations. So you'll see that there's the one line operating went up about 19, in part due to that change, but then training and development went down 16. So we're looking at a $3,000 difference there. One of the main things under training and development that we added, which I'll point out, is there's an increase, or actually under operating, I'm sorry. There's an increase in our annual fee that we're paying into the regional SWAT team. One of the things that we discussed earlier this fall amongst the chiefs that are all members of the SWAT team, this regional team, is that they wanted to make an investment in a drone program. That was going to cost an increase for every town of about $3,000 for the annual fees. But that drone program is really going to add a very necessary tool, especially for modern law enforcement in de-escalating situations. It essentially can serve as being able to collect intelligence, but also it's a communications tool as well. So for the purposes of supporting de-escalation, it's really going to be something that enhances the ability for negotiators to try to calm a situation, get it to a point where we can mitigate things very safely. So we all felt that that was a very necessary enhancement that we needed to make this year for the team. And really on the non-salary side, that's my synopsis there. I don't know if anybody has any questions about those particular
I
ones.
have a quick question for
Yeah.
you. You mentioned the fee for the SWAT team.
Yeah.
Out of operating supplies. Do you have other similar type of fees in there?
There's
It's,
two
it
other,
sounds like it'd be more of different line item for that. It's not,
there's two other regional teams in there.
like a dues subscription fees line kind of thing. It's not really a supply. I'm just wondering if maybe we should consider that for, you know what I mean, to break that out. When I see operating supplies, I think stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know if those add up to anything significant or not, but
Just
just,
looking
just
for
when
it
I,
in my stack here.
just for transparency, I'm thinking that, that's a little bit different than a thing to buy.
Yeah, so we have it as operating supplies / services under that section. I can certainly move it. There's, so we have the Shoreline Regional SWAT team. We have the Regional Accident Investigation team, and then we also have the Computer Crimes Group that we're part of. All three of those are under.
Right, and we're talking how much money approximately? $100, $100,000?
Oh, no, these are, the SWAT team is 8,500.
Oh, yeah, so,
The Accident Recon is 4,500, and the Computer Crime team is 3,000.
I don't know what the Board of Selectmen thinks. I think that
Outside
really
services, yeah.
sounds like some other type of line item.
I'll
that
leave
we
it to you guys to make the adjustment.
Okay,
Okay, we'll work on that.
sure.
Are the new cars plug-in hybrid?
No, sir, they're not. They're hybrid, so they work.
So
They
we
put gas
can't
in.
calculate some of the savings against the increase in electricity. Oh,
No, unfortunately, the increases in electricity are what I think everyone in Connecticut's facing right now with the just the increased cost, the public benefits charges. The,
And a decrease in the
Just
budget
thought
from
there
last
might
year
be
is
some
showing the
offset.
difference.
yeah. Yeah,
So the thing that bothers me a little bit about the utilities lines going from department to department is how much they're varying. And yours is one of the bigger increases. So sometimes the explanation's been just usage, but I don't know. This time,
Well, that's a, well, okay.
it's just usage.
It was a reduction in we took a
Okay,
reduction. in
from
their
last
budget.
year not being
In the-
budgeted.
In the current year, the FY '25 budget, we took too much of a reduction in their budget when we
Okay,
were,
I heard that mentioned. So that was really the
that's
driving
really the
factor.
driving
what
factor.
was the actual versus the reduction?
I had budgeted for last
You
year.
had that?
Do you remember what the cut was?
I want to say I was in the high 60s, I think, last year.
I don't,
So it wouldn't have been such a greater difference. if-
correct, that's the point we're
Yeah,
making.
but are we
Right.
We
talking
had
20 or
cut.
10? Okay, so you can get back.
Yeah, I think it was cut probably about 10 to 15 last year, just off the top of my head, but we'd have to go look at.
Even at the high sixties, 25%, 30% increase.
I could go back into, you
And the
guys
pro-
can keep going. I
The
can go back
projection
into
for the
other
electrical
meetings.
cost this year was based off of the bills that we've paid already this year.
Yep.
trying to project that out for the rest of this fiscal year, and then adding 5% to that was what we were
Mhm.
asked to do, so that is substantial considering how much the electric costs have gone up. And we're also running not just the police department, we have the police department, we have animal control, and then a much smaller cost is the range building. So
I have that number, the police department and the commission originally came with a budget for utilities, budget request of 67,593. And it was cut.
And we dropped it to 55, and through November, you're right on, you're at 41%, which is the expended budget amount as well, so.
Elapsed 28 years.
And Chief, if I can sort of just speculate a little bit, I mean, your operations are basically 24 hours. There's something going on in those buildings, including animal control, all day, every day, right?
the police department is where a majority of the work is being done 24/7. Animal control is, we do have it staffed during the day, but there's not as much activity at night in there. Other than we keep the lights on if we do have, and heat, if there's, well, we keep it on all the time regardless if there's animals in there, but.
Yeah, all I'm
and then the
saying is
range
your operations tend to be probably a little more energy intensive than some others.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions on that portion?
You know, maybe this is an analysis that your department wants to get into, but I'm curious that you're saving some fuel with the hybrids, but then were the hybrids more expensive than their sort of counterpart, just combustion engine vehicle? So kind of interested, but I guess that's a good thing. We save some fuel there. Are we circling back to the salaries? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I didn't want to skip.
That's right.
I figured I would,
He's all done.
I would go through the lighter lift first and then we'll get into the main portion. So if everybody's ready to go into salaries, I can go in there. So I'll start with under police salary. One of the needs that we've identified at the police department is our detective unit has essentially been running with 2 detectives and a detective sergeant for many years. There was a point back in the early 2000s when I look back at the budget, we did have a 3rd detective position funded. But that person was assigned out to a task force, a regional task force. It wasn't somebody physically in the building doing investigative work. Where we stand right now, this is something that's really mission critical for us. We want to try to put another detective in the detective unit. We're to the point now where the caseload and the backlog of cases is getting to a point where we really need to, if we can get another person back there, it's going to help us get back to a more manageable level, which will hopefully enhance our outcomes for cases. If there's a solvable case, but we have to put it to the back burner because we have something more pressing that they need to work on. Certainly we want to be able to get to those cases that are moved down the priority list sooner than we're getting to them now. The detective unit doesn't just take all of our major cases. They do a lot of support for patrol as well. So, there's fraud cases that come in on a regular basis where the detective unit may not be taking the entire case, but they're doing a lot of support function for patrol. And they may be assisting with writing search warrants, serving search warrants, particularly on banks and vendors that are all over the place. It's very labor intensive. They assist a lot with risk protection orders, with being able to do process service for that. So that's with the red flag law that was passed in Connecticut within the last couple of years here, where if we have somebody that's an imminent threat, we have to do paperwork to submit basically it's a search warrant to then go and seize firearms and then put that through the court process to make sure that the court is looking at them to deem if they're suitable to continue to have possession of firearms. Those things are very labor intensive. A lot of times the detectives actually float to go help the officers with going down to court, making sure that those processes are put through the proper way. doing all that paperwork. So the position is very labor intensive.
Background check.
They assist with background checks, not just for the police department and also, but also for the town. So town employees, they get a lot of those background checks. Sometimes when there's a backlog, I noticed when I was the deputy chief, I was for a little while actually taking care of some employee backgrounds for the town to kind of keep Mitch's operation running. In that particular circumstance, actually, there was a homicide investigation that we were working on where that was the main priority because we have 2 detectives and a detective sergeant. They have to work and put all their efforts in that area. So we had to farm out a lot of their work around the building. Not the best workflow, but we're doing what we needed to do. I just wanted to touch upon the technological aspects of a lot of these cases now. We're in a point where a lot of these cases that go into the detective unit, they require an extensive amount of work with looking at technology, cell phones, computers, access to the internet, different internet sites, cloud-based services. Everything that they need to do typically requires search warrants, and not just 1 or 2. Sometimes it's 10, 15, 20 search warrants in the course of their cases. This requires them to, because when we do search warrants, it's 2 people have to go down to court and get them signed. There's a lot of time where they're going down to court, coming back, serving search warrants. It's, again, very labor intensive. Having that extra person back there is really going to help at least even out the caseload so that we could still stay as efficient as possible back there. So again, I presented it. It's in the budget. It's certainly for the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance to consider. I understand there will probably be questions, so I can stop here. Anybody
I
has
got a
any?
question right away, and I'm sorry, I haven't sifted through all the information yet. Is the ask to upgrade someone to detective or to get an additional
This will be a new position.
FTE?
And I can explain why I would go that route as the preferred route is because operating patrol, right now we have 23 officers that are up to 23 officers in our patrol bid. Typically, we don't have 23 officers that are available to cover all these shifts. We have a new hire that's in the police academy. We have somebody out on injury. We have somebody out at a lengthy training. There's a variety of reasons why we're typically never at that number where we have 23 people available to cover patrol shifts throughout the week. When we start dropping that number down to fill ancillary assignments like a detective unit, when that pulls away from patrol, one of the things that we see is when we get to a certain point with our staffing, we start seeing our replacement overtime go up and also the regular overtime lines and training overtime. It starts to affect other areas of the operation. Ideally, I'd like to keep the patrol staffing at a minimum where it is, where I have at least 23 officers available so that I can absorb any loss in personnel for the various reasons that I just explained. That's preferred. So.
Yeah, definitely a good explanation, Charles.
The requirement to have 2 people go to court and do these warrants, is that our requirement or that's some?
That is all through that's how the law works, so if we go for an arrest warrant, it requires 1 affiant. So that's 1 police officer, swearing to the facts and circumstances inside the 4 corners of a warrant and it's submitted to court. For a search warrant, you need 2. They need to be present with the judge when it's reviewed, and then they have to raise their hand, swear, and get it signed off on. So,
So it's a requirement outside of our.
yeah, it's a requirement for everyone who's a police officer in the state of Connecticut.
Talked a little bit about the increase in caseloads related to cyber activity.
I can speak in generalities.
Yes,
I think
cases.
Yeah, I think
You're seeing.
yeah, one of the things that our detective unit has become very good at, we've partnered with the state years ago as part of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. So a lot of those crimes get forwarded through our department. We also don't just handle crimes for here in Guilford. We'll handle them for the surrounding area as well. We've essentially become a hub for this area of the shoreline where if we get a case out of Branford, Madison, pretty much anywhere in this region here, that cyber tip will come in, our detectives will review it, see if it's something that they can act upon, and then we'll work with those agencies. Sometimes we work with them in a support capacity. Sometimes, if they don't have the capacity to handle the investigation, we'll take it and we will handle it. It's very necessary work that needs to be done. That program is typically looking at, anything where we're looking at criminals that are online, downloading, child pornography. That's one of the main things that comes through on there. And, you know, these are serious offenses, and I think we do a really good job at investigating them thoroughly. That being said, on the back end, when we get to the point where we have probable cause for an arrest, we also need to support a court process on the back end, which requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So we now need to go, and there's a lot of work that gets done afterwards. Once we make an arrest because we have probable cause, we go through the court system, get that all signed off. We have to then go and support on the back end. Court wants us to go through everything else and provide, you know, what files were on the computer and how they were mapped, and how do we show that this file existed on this computer and on this hard drive. And there's so much work on the back end that needs to get done that the public doesn't see that, or necessarily get presented that all the time. They see the news releases that we made an arrest, but the arrest doesn't stop with the news release. There's a lot of work on the back end to really build those cases for a successful prosecution. So that is a lot of this, the labor hours go into, a lot of it goes into the back end work as well.
Other questions on the detective, or can we talk a little bit about the increase in the civilian salaries?
And yep, I'm prepared to talk about that as well. So the increase there is driven by, I'm making a request for a fourth civilian dispatcher. It's something that I've looked at for a little while now. Right now, our dispatch center, we have the same staffing requirement as the fire department has with communications down in the basement here. We have to have somebody there 24/7, answering the phone, answering the radio, checking for emails, checking for fax. We also have the added component of a public facing, somebody walks into the police department and they come up to the window, the dispatcher handles them there. Currently, we have 3 civilian dispatchers who cover 120 hours a week that's just the regular hours, out of 168 possible hours. So for 48 hours, typically Sundays and Mondays is how we have the schedule right now. We have a police officer working the desk. Just a basic analysis of the difference in salary. It's about right now, roughly $17 an hour difference. I believe it was around 57% difference in their salaries. And overall, over the course of a year, you're looking at over $40,000 by having a police officer sitting there for 2 days a week versus a dispatcher. Now, on top of that, we also have a lot of our overtime is driven by needing to fill the dispatch center if a dispatcher's off or not there. So for dispatcher replacement, when I look through the last 2 fiscal years that were complete fiscal years that I could look from July through June, we had over 2,000 hours that you can attribute to if we had a dispatcher sitting at the desk for those shifts. That overtime either wouldn't have existed or potentially could have been filled by a dispatcher as well. But with 2,000 hours, and typically those are covered by sworn staff, police officers, sergeants, lieutenants, at their respective overtime salaries, we're looking at in the high 50s. Anywhere from, I believe I actually ran the numbers here and give it for you in a second. So I'm looking at fiscal year 22-23. Once I took out the amount of shifts the overtime shifts that were worked by dispatchers, there were still about 1,900 hours that were covered by sworn personnel. That was around $57,000 in overtime and regular salary there. Oh, no, I'm sorry, overtime. And then in fiscal year 23-24, again, a little over 1,900 hours was covered by sworn staff, and that was about $58,000. These are some pretty big numbers. And what I'm looking to do here is really, at the end of the day, if we can have a civilian staff member that can fill at least some of these hours on the desk and get us closer to having full-time coverage, understanding that another 40-hour position doesn't completely fill the 48-hour gap that we have. What that's going to do is that's going to enable me to use sworn staff for what we hire and pay them for, which is to be out on the road doing police work. If I can have that staffing available and serving where they need to serve, it adds what I think is a little bit more resiliency if we do have a reduction in staffing at any point where we have people out on injury, we have people away for deployments, we have people, new hires out for training that don't help with patrol yet. It gives us a little bit of resiliency so that the dispatch center is a little bit more self-sufficient. And now we can worry about covering patrol with the patrol officers and the ones that we have. And I think that this is a necessary step with the town anticipating some growth with residential growth as well as commercial growth. If we're maximizing the use of our existing officers that we have right now and not using them just to cover the desk for at least 2 days a week, I think that's a good move moving forward so that if we do have to talk down the road about adding officers in the future, at least we've done some of these other steps where we're doing the things that are most fiscally responsible up front, rather than just coming in and saying, well, our call volume's gone up, or we've added 1,000 homes to town, or, you know, we've added all these commercial businesses, instead of saying, well, I need 5 more officers. Well, I don't know what I need yet, but I want to make sure that we're doing the fiscally responsible thing, which is covering these positions with a civilian staff member versus sworn. So
Would that suggest that there are some potential savings to be had in the overtime budget as a result of taking that move?
it's potential.
Not reflected in your budget though.
Yeah, so the overtime, I base it off of a 3-year average. Again, it's the overtime lines are really contingent on what happens.
Yeah.
And we have a very unpredictable business, so I can reference back to, we had a homicide a few years ago. The overtime for the weeks that we were doing the lion's share of that investigation was overwhelming to look at. It's a lot of hours that we're paying out.
We can understand it's a very volatile budget item,
I
but
think it'll trend
if
lower.
what you're suggesting is that we consistently are between 55 and 60,000 in overtime with the dispatch role, we're going to put somebody in there. I think logic dictates we could take some of that out of the base, maybe not all of it, but
I think that's right.
Yeah.
so.
Is a potential new employee just will rotate in with the existing ones? You'll have enough shift hours?
Yeah, so we have, we've taken a look at the model schedule that the fire department's using right now, because they're operating right now with 4 dispatchers. And we've looked at that. It's gonna be something that we're gonna have to talk to our dispatcher union about in terms of coming up with a schedule. You know, it also enables us to take a look at our patrol schedule. You know, we have it skewed in a manner that tries to help us cover Sundays and Mondays a little bit better, because we know we're gonna have to cover the desk those days.
Okay, so you have at least those days to fill in with the potential additional.
Yeah, that 4th position, the fire department does it where they float and they cover different shifts. It's not a straight days or straight evenings or straight midnights. They float around and cover holes. So.
Can I ask a question for clarification? You mentioned that the sworn officers have about 1,900 hours of overtime. And that overtime, is that directly related to them covering the dispatcher?
So when I looked in our,
That's 48 hours a week.
so no, this is actually overtime.
That's just all the overtime.
Yeah, so.
Regardless of the purpose.
So when I looked in our system, I'm gonna try not to make it sound more complicated. But essentially we have 3 designations where we have dispatch replacement, which is just a straight dispatcher replacement. We have patrol/dispatch. So if there's not a dispatcher working, and we had it now where we were gonna cover them with an officer on straight time, but now we have an officer booked off. Well, now we just need somebody to get in here to cover. And If we cover it with an officer, we cover it with an officer. If we have a dispatcher that signs up, we can still run our shift with minimum staffing, with a dispatcher on the desk. And then there's supervisor patrol slash dispatch replacements, which is if it's a day where we have two supervisors working, because there's a few days where they overlap. But now we don't have a supervisor, we don't have enough patrol, and we don't have a dispatcher. We offer it out to whoever can come in, but ultimately the driving force there is if we had someone on the desk, those other replacements weren't necessary. It's, I know it sounds a little bit more complicated, but essentially those hours that I did, all, if we had someone on the desk, wouldn't have happened.
So question, I think the question was, are those 1,900 hours specifically dedicated to dispatchers?
So
A-
it reflects a vacancy at the desk.
A vacancy at the
Yeah.
desk. Yeah, so that's not all the overtime, just the overtime for to cover the desk.
Yeah.
I think that was your kind of
To
your
cover the
question,
desk for those 48 hours, Sunday and Monday.
or anytime somebody's
No,
out.
this is anytime during the week.
Anytime.
So if we, let's say we send a dispatcher or the dispatcher books off sick on a Wednesday. They book off sick on a Wednesday. Well, we look at the schedule and, all right, supervisor just booked off sick and now an officer just booked off sick. We need somebody to come in and cover the desk so that we have a supervisor, we have enough patrol officers, and then we have somebody assigned to the desk. You know, that's where that overtime, it gets put in as different things, but at the end of the day, if we had someone on the desk, we wouldn't be paging out for overtime to fill a hole because we had somebody there. So
It gets a little complicated to figure out exactly how much you'd save, obviously.
it does. And again, it is volatile. I'd say it's, what I'm hopeful is that over a 3-year average, we're going to see over the next few years that these numbers will trickle down. And then that's going to be a better reflection of the impact of having the dispatcher there. Certainly we can estimate a certain amount we might reduce for next year. But I can't say exactly what that number would be because I don't know what next year is going to look like. I don't know what tomorrow or later today is going to look like. So
Let me ask you about the question that never goes away that I keep getting asked. Given redundancy in technology, cellular, and great training in this, we need 2 dispatch centers. Is it territory? How many towns have got 2 separate fire and separate police dispatch? If somebody calls in and says, I got running around with an axe in my yard, or my kitchen is caught on fire, does a dispatcher need to be separately trained to do?
So I believe, and this would be a better question for the fire department as well. You know, I think some of these dispatch centers that operate with police and fire are staffed with multiple personnel at the same time because especially if we have multiple things going on and you have a fire going on and then you have police activity going on, somebody really can't balance that. In addition to, at our station, you have to handle the window. So if somebody walks in, we have emails coming in, we have faxes coming in asking us to do stuff, to try to balance radio communications for 2 different emergency service entities. I think the staffing would remain the same, whether it's consolidated in one location or not. That's certainly something for future discussions, if that's something that maybe is more cost effective in terms of you know, the electricity and internet and other costs, overhead costs that would go into running a dispatch center. But that's certainly something that would have to require some lengthy discussions. With the fire department serves as the public safety access point. So 911 actually goes into the fire department first, then gets forwarded to us if it's a police matter. They handle everything else. There's different training that goes into this. You know, we have different security access training and things that the fire department doesn't have. There's certainly, I think there's a lot of combined dispatch centers, so it's certainly a topic for future discussion.
I think the real opportunity, and this is the sort of the third rail in the business I'm in with chief elected officials and their respective public safety heads, is consolidation of the 911 centers. The County of Los Angeles runs on one 911 dispatch center.
Bad example.
We have, well, They've been pretty busy.
Or a better,
better.
or the best example, one or the other.
And, Connecticut, the land of steady habits and fiefdoms, there are, probably 115 dispatch centers in the state. And that's where the opportunity is. There still needs to be this respective experience at the
Training level.
at the training level, but getting the calls from downstairs over to fire department could be done from Hartford
Yeah.
or Stanford, wherever. So that's where there is an opportunity there.
Yeah.
CCM keeps trying to push that envelope a little bit, but we're.
Anyway, it's something I've got to reflect. I keep getting asked.
All right, anything else for the chief?
Are we going on to the next line? I was curious a little bit about replacement salaries coming up.
Sure, you have a question about it? Most of these other areas, I just did, just to kind of generalize, I did, 3-year averages. So for the training overtime, I kept pretty flat, because we're really trying to leverage online training where we can. So I felt that I can keep that fairly flat and, not have to increase the budget substantially there.
Well, compared to the fire department's line item here, you're doing a lot better. So some of the questions are why, but I think maybe your minimum staffing level is a little bit lower, so you got a little bit of flexibility.
So I do have an answer for you on that. So the fire department, they have 100% replacement rate is my understanding. So if somebody books off, they have to replace them. They have to maintain that minimum staffing because to be able to operate the headquarters and also North Guilford, they have to have the appropriate staffing on duty to operate the requisite equipment that they need to be able to do their job. For us, our minimum staffing level is not as high as theirs. So for operational security purposes, I don't want to discuss the exact amount of people that we put on a shift. But we have times where we don't fill a shift. If, as long as we're staying at a minimum level, we don't fill if somebody books off automatically. We have to take a look at it and we fill at a certain point. So
Another question, because I probably don't follow as closely as I should, but are you full staffed? I mean, I know you're dealing all the time with someone who's in training or someone who's sick, but are you fully staffed now? Or?
So right now, the deputy chief did retire from law enforcement over the Christmas break. So we're currently at 39 of 40 authorized. We have somebody in the police academy. Someone just came off training, but we did have 2 people on field training, which is prior to them being able to be authorized to be on the road by themselves. And then we have a couple injuries right now as well. So, when I tell you, I really want to try to keep the patrol numbers where they are because we're constantly dealing with fluctuations in staffing that if we can make sure that we have a good buffer there, I know that if I could stay above that point where I'm constantly paging out for shifts and replacement overtime, it's a much better place for us budget wise.
And we were at full staff for about 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the deputy chief retired.
So
Yeah.
We're
if you get
busy.
the dispatcher, does that help the replacement line as well? Sorry, monopolizing the question.
I think it absolutely will.
Yeah, because
that's why I presented.
There, right, with your patrol officers.
Yeah, that's why I presented because that is a position that has to be filled. And what we're typically doing now is if the dispatcher books off, if we have staffing available for patrol, we'll pull them to cover the desk. If we have enough, but we have to maintain a certain minimum on the road as well. So if we have that position filled more often with somebody on a regular salary or even on dispatch overtime, I can keep the officers on the road where that's what we're hiring them to do. We're hiring them to be out on patrol, doing investigations, doing the work that we're paying them for. So
I just want to put a bow around these questions. So sometimes we wonder if you add another staff, if that would almost pay for itself, right? Because you get reductions in overtime and possible reductions in replacement costs. So I think your analysis is sort of at least looking at that. And, it'd be nice if we knew the numbers, but you're pretty confident there's definitely some offset. To hire a dispatcher and some savings in the other lines.
yeah, and I took a look at how this looks for a schedule over the course of a year. I built out schedules for a year on Excel, and I have staffing punched in, and I punched in, what it looks like with a dispatcher. And really what it does is I talk about resiliency to absorb losses and losses of personnel and personnel that aren't available for patrol. It pushes a lot of the times when we would run down to minimum staffing, which then that exposes us to replacements and other types of overtime. It pushes that out a little bit. It doesn't eliminate it, but it pushes it out a little bit. So instead of if we drop down there where there's only 18 officers available to cover patrol for the 24-hour operations for that month, instead of having 314 shifts that we're at bare minimum, where every time someone books off, we're paying overtime to replace, we're looking at, somewhere in like around 100 that we're either at minimum or causing replacement. So I think that those numbers are very favorable. I can't estimate exactly what it's going to look like.
Well, let me point out that your replacement request is only 12% of total salaries. And you tend to come in on budget. There are other departments that don't.
Let me add to that as well. There's only one place in the police budget that ARPA funds are affected, and happens to be the replacement area. So the 5.1%, 5.2% you're seeing increase in replacement is really 3.22%. The difference being an $8,000 offset of the ARPA that goes away. That's another example of where his number would be lower or for the offset from this last year.
All right.
Move on if we
Folks,
can.
yeah, I think it's time to move
Yeah,
on.
we can,
Appreciate the detail that we've.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
there will be
Thank you.
follow-up.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Folks, you too. Take care. Deb, waiting patiently.
Yeah.
Thank-
Matt, I gotta have to log out. I'll see you guys.
All right, Lou, take care. Thank you.
Take care, Lou.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, tax collection. Deb, feel free to talk about how your department brings in more money than.
Talk about revenue.
We've had other people talking about their revenue triumphs.
She's got the nice pockets, what I'd say.
Yeah, from a P and L standpoint.
You could comment on this.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. So you have before you the tax collector office, budget. It's pretty straightforward, no big surprises.
The printing line item going down is,
Yeah, it did go down.
what's the reason for that?
I don't know. Quality likes that.
Quality, okay, that's price from quality.
Yeah.
PQDS.
I don't know if they do.
No.
It's big
You know,
nuts.
it should be noted that in the selectmen's budget, I think we thought this should go up because
Yes.
we understand that quality is going to charge more for that, as well as the postage services increases coming on.
Yeah, we still only do the mailing once every cycle.
Well, yeah, Bob, I think we have a new winner, right? 1.1% reduction, are we now?
You're ahead.
You're
I
ahead.
think second place, sorry.
Go.
I think we had a 14% decrease, right?
That's an eliminated position. It helps.
Yeah, well,
That-
there you go.
It's across the hallway, so. Anyway, any questions, any further questions for Deb?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you for
you're
your
welcome.
patience.
Good job, guys.
Yeah. All right, Public Works. Morning, Mr. Chairman.
Morning.
Dave.
Morning.
All right, well, what have you got for us, guys? And Ralph Casey, another member of the commission here, and Ralph providing moral support.
So. Let's see.
They're moving it,
Yeah.
changed by the minute.
We changed it a few times. Yeah.
He's not keeping me abreast of the situation.
5 minutes before. So we had to make some changes to our budget. Just so you know, the line items that you see, we went down on some of the stuff as of today. So the first one here is full-time salaries. That is a higher number right now because we would like to ask for 2 additional employees to our department. One on the maintenance side of the department and one on the mechanic side of the department. I'll go into the mechanic side of the department first, so that so you can understand what our justification for it is. In 1992, the town had 90 vehicles that were plated. 76, so 14 of them were at the transfer station, okay? They were trailers, okay? Those trailers are now gone. So now so the 90 vehicles in 1992 were plated vehicles. Now, here we are in 2025, and we had 5 mechanics then. Now we're in 2025, we have 143 vehicles and 5 mechanics. They're way behind on their work, and they can't catch up because we have so many vehicles now. And this is just plated vehicles. This is not including all the mowers that have been added, all the trailers that have been added, everything else that has been added for these mechanics. They're at the point where we can start working Saturdays, but it would take away from my overtime budget if a tree falls or something like that. So of the 2 positions, this is, I feel, is of the most pressing need, but to double your vehicles and still have the same amount of mechanics really is not working in the shop right now. We're trying, we're struggling, but I think that we should add a mechanic because of that. As far as the maintainer side of the house goes, currently we have 14 maintainers. I looked at averages of all the other towns in the state, and if you look at other towns, every 8 miles of road, you have a maintainer that accounts for 8 miles of road. We are at 11 miles of road. So we are actually behind with, there was one town, 118 miles of road, and they have 20 maintainers for the roads themselves. So we're behind on that. We also, when we salt, we use 2 people from Parks and Rec because we don't have enough bodies to salt the roads. Now the justification, I know that it's a lot, but I did some numbers as far as what our department has saved the town in over the last year, and I have to pull it out because I have a digital copy of it. So we do the landscaping at the police department. That's a savings of $8,000 a year to the town that we do. We purchased 2 zero-turn lawnmowers on state auction for $50 a piece, and we mow that grass, saving the town $8,000. Last year, we went to the transfer station, replaced the hydraulic tank at the transfer station. That was an $80,000 job that was quoted for the town. We did it for $3,000. At Bittner Park, we did the prep work for that park. That is a savings of $20,000 to the town. Also, I did a quick did some math as far as our tree crew grows, which we finally have a full year of our tree crew. Our tree crew grows out on average 3 to 5 out of the 5 days, 3 or 4 days. So I went at 4 days a week, going off of what Kevin's numbers were for the tree crew. Our tree crew saves the town $689,000 a year doing trees. And that's on the low end. If we go at the high end, which is $5,000 a day, our tree crew is saving the town $985,000 a year. So Public Works, we do a lot on the road. We are first responders. We are responsible for the most expensive asset in town, which is our infrastructure, our roads. You can't do anything without the roads, and we're responsible for maintaining them. So what I'm trying to do is get one more maintainer, because I'm just going to give you a quick example of what our spring summer rundown is for our guys. We have a total of 14 guys. So we have 2 in the sweeper, 3 in the mowers, 2 cleaning catch basins, 3 on the tree crew. And if you count the sign guy, that's 11 guys. That leaves us 3 guys for catch basins, pothole repair, fixing drainage. As you can see, we're understaffed. You need at least 5 for that job. So if we do that, we shut down the sweeper or the mowers or something like that. But the problem is this town is very used to our quick response now, and they're very happy with it. But when we stop sweeping, we get a call right then and there. Hey, how come you haven't swept my road? I saw you were on this other road yesterday, and how come you're not mowing? There's a sightline issue, and it happens. And so that one extra guy will make a huge difference in this. Not to, and also we have to keep in mind that this crew doesn't go on vacation from November until end of May because of snow. They're here. So they have to take all of their vacation, sick, everything else in that short window, that's 6-7 months that they have. So with this rundown here, now take out 2 or 3 guys for vacation or for personal time or whatever. It's their time. They're entitled to it, but that's why we see a justification in a road guy. So that's why we have an increase in our salary, such a big increase in our salaries for full-time salaries. Labor work orders, we kept that the same. Part-time and seasonal salaries, it actually is down. That number that you have there, 27,277. It actually, we're going to decrease that. We don't need the CDL driver. So that is going to decrease that by $4,279. So it's actually going to be $24,657, that item, which is going to bring that line item to 14.7% decreased. 24,657. And that's for the part-time salaries. The commission secretary, that's the contractual agreement that was from Mitch. Overtime, we went down on overtime. We dropped it down $9,000. So we went down 8.3% there. The stipends, that's just for the arborist on our tree crew, the $1,000 stipend that's contractually agreed upon. So on purchase services, expenses and travel, that item as well has changed. It was in your packet, you see $6,900. We're actually going to change that to $5,500. And the reason for that increase is because when they're here for 24 hours, we buy them meals. We only buy them, we're only allocating for breakfast and dinner. So we really should be getting them something for lunch too, if they're here for 24 hours or they're here all day plowing snow or trees or whatever. So that's why I put a little increase in there for that. Equipment rental, you see that went down 47%. We don't need to rent the Vector anymore. We're getting one. So that's savings. So utilities, that is based off of 47,000 last year, so we only went up $3,000 because of price increase. Fuel, we went up $2,000, and that's actually a number that I think we're going to start decreasing that at some point. We started doing was we have a Freightliner program for our Freightliner trucks. Now these trucks are going to shut off after 15 minutes. They're not going to idle anymore. Same thing with the Max. They're going to shut off, so we're going to save fuel in the long run with that. We also have started buying electric power tools. We have electric chainsaws now, so that we're not using gas. We have a couple of different electric items in there to cut down on that price. Building maintenance, we went up $3,400. We have been having a lot of problems with our sprinkler system. A lot of maintenance has been done to it, so that's why you see the bump in there. Radio maintenance, we kept that the same. Equipment repair and maintenance, that's another one that changed. You have on your sheets there $196,379. We're going to change that to $190,000 total, even. The next one is uniform clothing allowance. That's based off of Cintas. It's just a little increase there. Contracted services, we went up 3.4% or $1,200. And that's because one of the jobs we did this year, we did the bridge over at Chittenden. We did that bridge for engineering. They purchased the bridge we put in. We had to rent, it's for concrete. It compresses the concrete. It's called vibratory. So that you get all the air pockets out of there so that it actually lasts. So we had to rent one of those. So that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about when we upped our rental budget a little bit there. Hazardous waste disposal, that's for the brush and leaf facility, that stayed flat. Copier and lease supply, so we need a new copier, and that's why you see a bump in there. We actually have a separate copier and separate fax machine in our building. So we're gonna have an all-in-one now. Office supplies, we went up $200. Minor tools and equipment, we just went up an extra 500 or 7%, but road maintenance in the summer, that line item changed. It's not gonna be 275,000 anymore, it's gonna be 265,000. And that's because I called the vendors that we use that are on state contract, and they said the price increase is not as big as we had thought, so we're still gonna be able to get the services that we were looking for. Road maintenance winter, that's 100,000 flat. We actually went down on that one by $766. We're seeing the effects of the salt. As a matter of fact, we just yesterday built with a brine tank in the garage. And that is something that I have to reach out to other departments for, but so right now, currently, we spend $12 a bag of salt for the sidewalks and everything. Well, with brine, a half a gallon of brine will go 250 feet. And we pay $67 a ton. So that's 2,000 pounds for $67. And they're getting a 40-pound bag for $12. So if we can make the brine, the cost of the ton is gonna be 10 cents a gallon. So we're looking to do that, and it's still, we're still working on it to get it right. But when we do, we're gonna reach out to the Board of Ed, we're gonna reach out to Parks and Rec. And no longer will you, in the winter, see sidewalks where you see salt everywhere. You won't see that anymore. You'll just see sidewalk after, because the brine will just go away once the snow clears. So we're working on that right now. We're always trying to look forward and look for ways to save the town and the taxpayer money. Road striping, we went up $1,000, and that was based off, I called, basically there's only one person in the game right now. And so I called them and asked them, and this is gonna pay for the striping of the roads. And there are roads that we have to keep up with retro reflectivity. So Longville was one of them. So those kind of roads, we have to continually paint them. I do see that number going down in the future too. Parks and Rec bought a paint machine for their fields. We can use that paint machine for our roads. We just have to work on it and get trained on it. It would just cost the town the cost of paint at that point. So this number should be dropping next year. Permits, dues, subscriptions, that's for APWA, that went up $100. So I put that in there. Education and training, I kept that flat. We have on our wall in our garage, you could see all of the certificates from all the training that the crew has gone to. It's amazing. They're totally into it. We've noticed the accidents have gone down. We noticed that they're asking questions now. They're not taking shortcuts. They're not taking chances. They're being safe. This program is really working for them. And then we get the $7,000 for the parking lot. And also our revenue, I think, is up at the brush and leaf facility.
Good. Thank you, Dave. Anything you want to add there, Mr. Chairman?
No, I just would like to first thank the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance members that are here today. And I know that asking for 2 additional employees is a lot to ask for. But I think Dave, with his can-do attitude, not can, shows justification for these, especially the amount of plated vehicles. And like
Dave said, that doesn't account for all the tractors, the lawnmowers, and all the other stuff that we're doing in-house now that we didn't before. And if you look at it, it's a 6.8% increase. Take the 2 employees away, it's a 3.4% increase. 2% of that is built-in salaries. So we ask for we keep our budget low. And Dave and his crew do a lot and save the town a lot of money in a different act. The tree crew alone, when we bought that bucket truck and got the updated chipper in it, we saved the town a lot of money on these down, dead trees that we would be hiring out for. So, my father always said, town should run like a business and operate like a business. I really think Dave operates that DPW like a business where it saves the town money. And to save the town money, you have to invest. Again, I thank you for your time. Again, I know that 2 employees is a lot to ask for in these times. But if we could somehow maybe get it in one into the budget this year and maybe one next year, something to help Dave with his staffing. I think that what he's done and what he's done for the town and the money that he saves the town, it's justified.
Any questions?
I got a question. Your salary line includes your salary increases and the possible potential new 2 positions, right?
Yes, their contracts are.
This is one of the contracts that is complete.
Yeah, that
Not
was
one- This is not anything involved with the reserve personnel.
So if you broke that out, how
Except for
much would
Dave.
it be for the maintainer and how much would it be roughly for the mechanic?
Maintainer was 61,900, and the mechanic is 73,200.
And again, that is reflective in your numbers and in the spreadsheets that are on board now, so. this is-
Okay. Yeah, and then I just, from the taxpayers appreciate when you're thinking about if we make the investment, what are we gonna save? Because that's always key.
If you ask for 2 new positions, are they pretty much even throughout the year or are they weighted more toward winter or summer? I'm thinking if we have a phases. Partway through.
Okay, good question. If, say I was approved for a mechanic, believe it or not, their toughest time is the summer. They are very busy in the summer, and then they're plowing in the winter and they're fixing, but it's tough for them, but that would be their busiest time. Same thing with the road crew. It's the spring, summer.
So the answer to that is both of them in the summer.
July 1.
Yeah,
But both of them, okay, years past, we would hire part-time plow drivers. You can't get them anymore. There's nobody out there that wants to come in and just plow snow. Can't get them. So these 2 would also become plow drivers that would help us out in the winter time also. So,
They would.
I mean, if you were to ask what's most important, and I think Dave would agree with me, the mechanic is, with the amount of plated vehicles, the amount of work that our mechanics do in-house, which if you think about it, the only department that he doesn't maintain is fire. All the other departments in the whole town, Park and Rec, Board of Education, police, all the police cars. We maintain all those vehicles, which is a great savings to the town if you had to send them out and hire them out.
The increase in vehicles over time, whatever, is because you're taking more in rather than contract out.
Right.
All right, so, and I've got to say, crews are great to work with.
Thank
They're
you.
a good culture. Thank you.
Thank you.
But if we were hiring things, under whose budget would they go? If we are hiring tree guys and all of that, where's that?
Kevin McGee,
Yeah.
which
but-
is why he
Right.
didn't ask for an increase.
So.
It's not only Kevin.
No, just so in case anybody's watching, we gotta connect the dots, that's all.
Right, but it's just the standard stuff that would fall.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not only
Yeah.
Kevin McGee. I mean, we did stuff for Park and Rec, the new playground at Bittner.
Right,
We're doing a new playground
Right.
at Jacobs Beach.
right. So the point, what I'm driving at here is that it won't be reflected so much in your budget, but in other town departments.
Correct. I actually reached out to a vendor who fixes cars. I don't want to say which brand.
That's fine.
$225 an hour right now is the going rate for a mechanic.
So I wanted to ask the distinction, if trees fall on the road, obviously you guys will get them out of the way, keep us moving. And then, for town projects, you're like, hey, we can do this, we got the equipment, so you're doing that. So for Kevin McGee, I think he'll point out some trees where he'll say, hey, this might be a danger. So you'll take that down for him. Do you also do things where he'll just maybe thin out the forest?
So what we do, which is great now, because I work really good with Kevin, and he sent me to be the deputy tree warden for the town, is he'll give me a list. Hey, Dave, here's this road. They got 20 trees here. Whatever your crew can take down, take down. And whatever they don't take is either too big or next to the wires. That's the only thing that stops them. And for example, he gave me one road. They took down every single tree, which would have been 3 days for a contractor to come and do, and they knocked it right out. So that's what we do now. We keep track of it like that. And then what they do is I send them out every day. Go trim the brush. I give them roads. Go trim this road. Go trim that road. We're improving sight lines. They'll be out there and they'll say, hey, we got a dead tree over here, or a dead tree over here. We're taking them down. So I noticed this year alone, the amount of calls for trees down was way less than the year before. We're putting a really good dent in it.
Dave has a certified arborist as part of his crew now, the stipend that he has for an arborist, because that person's up keeping his license and helping to identify things that we weren't able to officially identify before, right?
Right, yeah, so it's really helping. He could see a tree in decline and say, hey, come take a look at this, and if it's bad, then, we let Kevin know if we have to post it. If not, Kevin will say, it's a hazard, it's gonna fall, take it down right now, and we do it.
So you gave this statistic of 5 mechanics. There were 5 mechanics in 1992.
Well, 4 and a foreman,
Okay,
and that's what we have right now.
okay. The other thing, and I don't need to know it today, but, because we're gonna meet after this, of course. The rest of the staff, it doesn't have to go back 30 years, but I'd be interested in just knowing in whatever increases the department got maybe since 2000 or something like that.
I can answer that.
Okay,
Not exact numbers, okay? But I want to say 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we had a bunch of retirees. We didn't replace them. Just as recent as I think about 3 or 4 years ago, we finally got back up to where we were back then. So we haven't increased. We haven't increased. We had our staffing, we were cut due to retirement, weren't replaced. And then over the years that I've been the commissioner, I fought to get one back, and Matt, you give me one back, you said not 2, 1 back. So we finally got back to where we were,
Pre-2010.
yeah. I
Because
sort
it
of
was,
remember.
it was a
I'm glad you
2008 market crash.
Yes,
Yeah,
And the retirements happened to come at the right time.
Yeah.
And the administration at the time said, oh, we're not gonna replace them
We're not
now. So
replacing.
and I believe it was 2 bodies that they
Yeah.
didn't replace.
so we finally
You
got
probably
back
remember
up to
better than
that,
I do.
but we haven't, like Ralph said, you've been 4 mechanics on the floor and a foreman since
Since 92.
1992.
Yeah. And me, I was the foreman down there and I still worked on the floor. I actually took care of all the police cars. So it's not like everybody didn't work on the floor. Everybody worked on the floor. But in the following years, up to when I left, we had 146 plates and the same 5 guys. And of course, just guys retiring, now they got this new crew in there. And they're hammered with 149 plates, I think. something like that.
43.
143 still.
Yeah.
And but it's a lot to take on, So, in Dave's defense, they need a guy, at least one guy, I mean, if you think about it, you went from 90 plated vehicles to 143 plated vehicles. You added almost 60 plates. And you didn't add any people to it, So there's a big increase in the load of work down there.
That, and again, those are just plates. That's not the lawnmowers, the tractors and all the other stuff that we've added. It's a lot. It really is.
Any other questions?
I just have one question, a little more general though, about purchasing vehicles. Do you ever buy vehicles new and get a warranty where they're serviced by the
Whoever sold them to us, or?
We do. Everything comes with a warranty, and my mechanics, they'll send out warranty work for anything that's damaged, but anything that's not, oil changes, brakes, tires, all of that.
That's us.
So
Right
you're
from the
dealing
beginning,
with what's
that's us.
not covered. All the vehicles.
Actually, we just promoted a foreman there, and in saving the town money, he signed up. The town has this program now with Ford that they offer to municipalities where they're offering, if you buy, you're buying X amount of parts, it's like a point system for towns, but some of the givebacks are training. So now this crew is gonna go in the spring for training on hybrids, electric vehicles, for the police department and for the selectmen, and there's 2 other department heads who have the same vehicle, and those are hybrids, and they're gonna get training on that now,
Yep, and those are gonna fall out of warranty soon enough.
very soon.
Anything else? Thank you both. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one question for you. I know we've made a big investment in equipment when I was first elected. So the equipment is as good as it's been. Are we maintaining? But I'm assuming we're maintaining it to the point where, you talk about warranties and stuff like that. I mean, it's very important that we keep it. So the 140, the investment we have down there, it seems to me to make sense to take care of it. Because we stretched it out last time and we paid the price. And we're gonna be stretching out this equipment. I think, like you say, getting them trained in hybrids and things like that. I think staying ahead of it is, be interesting to know how many pieces of equipment, you're talking about how many plates you service. How many pieces of equipment actually are public works vehicles? Do we have more
We've got to
trucks
break
or
out.
less trucks?
I provided the vehicle inventory to all of you
No, I would
a
just
while back. I
generally
can
as a
resend it.
department,
Yeah.
did we end up with more newer trucks? Or did we end up with equal numbers of trucks? I mean, we didn't increase roads. So.
No, so maybe I'm best to answer this question, Charlie. So I was a big opponent, and Matt knows this. 1 plate in, 1 plate out. Now you have to have spares, because the plowing of a truck goes down. And I'm a big, and I tell Dave all the time, what trucks are we getting rid of? Why is this truck still here?
I remember, we cleaned out a lot, so we never had a lot of
Here,
spares.
so we're at full step. So the other thing I did, and Dave said, last month, I said, Dave, I want a mileage report on all the trucks.
Yeah.
Because we're not getting the winners that we had. That's what we usually put a lot of miles on the trucks, plowing snow. So a 20-year truck, and that's what we used to say is a truck should last 20 years. I told Dave, I said, Dave, we gotta get longer. We gotta go 25. I said, so I did a mileage report, and some of these trucks, like a 2009, only had 24,000 miles on it. So I said, Dave, we need to do a better job of washing these trucks after storms, keeping the salts off, using the products that Ralph has bought in the past to spray down the frame so they don't rust, because it's not the truck and the mileage, it's the rust on the frame. So, and Dave does. Dave brings the trucks in right after a storm, and he washes them, and he neutralizes the frames and so forth to keep them, because our trucks should go better than 20 years now. That we used to use a 20-year average. I'd like to see these trucks should go 25, 30 years. So we should be getting longer.
That mileage thing will also be able to tell you how much you're spending on a truck. I mean, you might just have a truck that isn't working out and you're end up spending too much money. Maybe.
Right.
Maintain it.
Right.
So that, I bet you there's some program that would keep track of that. Yeah, I would think almost that manufacturers, don't they have records, and computers in the trucks telling you the mileage, and then you have to get service now and you gotta get oil.
Well, we
I
have,
heard one thing went into a limp mode after a certain number of miles, if you didn't get an oil change.
To that point, I want to, Dave just instituted a program for the non-public works vehicles. He worked with Mike Show, with the Yoshi program, to kind of
so that every department will report their mileage on a monthly basis. So to make sure that we're doing the preventive maintenance, they'll see the miles, time for oil change, or time for, look at your brakes, or do something. So it's only pads as opposed to rotors, right? So
Especially now, everything costs so much, it's worth taking care of.
so they're making those proactive steps.
Absolutely.
Good.
Thank you.
all. Can, I know Pam, you're up next, but can we take a 5-minute health break?
What's 5 more minutes, right?
Dave.
Five.
Right, Pam, Human Services.
All right. Hello,
Hello.
everybody. Hello. Just empty chairs. Nice to see you all again. I'm Pam Elman. I'm the chair of the Human Services Council. Just a little reminder that there's a town ordinance that requires us to evaluate human services needs and make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. And that's what we do every year. This year, we received 23 applications for town funding, which is 4 more than last year. And we're recommending funding for 19. Of the 4 new organizations, we're only recommending funding for 1 of them. The total requested by the organizations this year was $225,291. And we are recommending to you $141,791, which is $22,100 more than last year. Just as a reminder, to be eligible for funding, each applicant has to be a 501c3 nonprofit, must serve Guilford residents, and must provide some type of human service such as childcare, education, healthcare, substance abuse treatment, basic needs, or trauma-related care. Each organization must complete an application, which is available on the Human Services Council page of the town website in August. Along with the application, they must submit their most recent financial statements, Form 990, list of their board of directors. Each organization is then invited to give a presentation to the Human Services Council. These meetings are held in October, and that's when we have the opportunity to ask specific questions about their applications. We always ask about their other sources of funding and their fundraising efforts. Additionally, for the organizations that serve residents from multiple towns, we ask how they ensure that Guilford funds are used for Guilford residents. This year, we focused on the organization's biggest challenges in the past year and long-term concerns. Some of the long-term concerns are staffing, costs, and reimbursement rates. We prepared a summary of each organization with our funding recommendation, which I've submitted with our numbers. That's this 11-page document.
It's on your board pack as well, so you didn't have to hunt it down.
Great.
Mhm.
This is a summary of every organization for which we are recommending funding, the amount they requested, the amount we recommended, and why. We also indicate how many Guilford residents they serve, if these organizations serve residents from multiple towns. The document does not include the organizations for which we are not recommending funding. So that's the basic synopsis of what we do. And if you have specific questions about any of the numbers or about any of the organizations, I'm happy to answer them.
The new one, Sid's Bookshop, Shack, one, I haven't read
Sure.
that
Can we talk about
narrative,
all of the new ones? All right.
Yes.
No, yeah,
Just the one?
yeah.
Okay.
You said there's 3 new ones.
We received was it
4
5 new applications? And of those 5, we are recommending funding for 1. That is Sid's Bookshop.
Okay.
Right. The other 4, we're not recommending funding for them. Sid's Bookshop, I'm sure you're familiar with. Sid is a intellectually disabled young adult, and here in Guilford, and her parents, she and her parents have started this great organization. It was along Route 1 before you get to Bishop's, and now it's moved just over the town line in Madison, actually across from the Red Tomato, and it is a bookstore, used bookshop, staffed by intellectually disabled young adults. Sid's parents teach them how to use the computer system, how they do everything in the store. They create you do graphic design, they create tote bags and T-shirts. They sell the books, they organize the books, they stock the shelves. This is really a great new organization. They partner with the Guilford Transition Academy. So young adults who come out of Guilford High School, they help to train them. And so they don't want kids to be shoved into jobs where where their natural abilities are not taken advantage of. And so they really help to train them for fulfilling careers, fulfilling jobs. And I had a chance to go over and visit with them, and it's a wonderful organization. And Sid came to the presentation here when we interviewed her parents about the organization. I went over to see them on a day when they were having an event. They were partnering with Sound Life Connections, which is another one of the organizations we're recommending funding for. They're right down here on the green. Right around the corner from Pages. They also work with developmentally disabled, intellectually disabled young adults, also from Guilford Transition Academy. They were partnering with SIDS with this an event, like it was a big book sale, and Sound Life Connections brought their ice cream truck over, and so there were a lot of people there, a lot of happy people. It was a really great event, and I did get a chance to meet some of the young adults that are working there. So SIDS Book Shack, since they are new to this process, they asked for quite a bit of money, and we had to educated them as to that these are town funds, and we have to be very particular about the amount that we recommend and how they're used. We also look for track records when we're recommending funding. As a new organization, we want to fund them, but we want to start low. We want to make sure that the funds are used appropriately and that the organization is successful. And we explained that to our parents, and they understood because they came in with a very large ask, and they came in with an ask of 20,000, and we were recommending 3,500, which I know seems low for what they're doing, but that's the reason why, and that's standard for us when we have a new organization. We really want to see an established track record before we increase the amount.
I see the North Guilford Nursery School not funded this year.
North Guilford Nursery School is not operating right now.
Well, they are about to they're opening their doors again.
I heard that as well.
Yes,
I'm trying to get them to withdraw their funds from last year. They still haven't done that yet, but I think that's because there's been no one to answer the emails that we sent.
Yeah, we did, I even know the name of it, but I can't think of it.
They were, we were talking about this, I think, about the funds. I keep emailing them every time I get the monthly report to please withdraw their funds.
I think we have some information here.
Yes, Christy Rubin, that's North Guilford, resident Fitchell Road, 221 Fitchell Road. I belong to North Guilford Congregational Church. The nursery school LLC actually closed and was supposed to be returning funds that it got from the Guilford Foundation and so forth. Under that LLC that they had, there is a new group coming in. Some of the people who were employed under the old LLC, and they are trying to get it reopened. And they've got support, I think, from the state and everything. They just have a couple of hurdles to get through, but I'm not sure who's in charge, but but it's two different operations, so it's not a continuation directly.
Yeah, I'll get you.
It wouldn't be a continuation direct.
Well, they didn't ask for it
Separate
this year, so
organization.
last year's funds.
It's a former director of the center is reopening
Yeah,
with the support from the Guilford Foundation. The town also worked with the Office of Early Childhood up in our state to
Great.
streamline the process for them to get accredited and licensed. So they're most likely to be back next year for.
Good.
So,
Well, the community nursery school was extremely helpful in absorbing a lot of those children that were shut out when they closed down. So, kudos to the community nursery school.
All right, other questions?
Yeah, you mentioned that your charge is to sort of bring to us the needs of the community. Where do you see the greatest need to Guilford residents? Would it be children's mental health or quality childcare, or what do you?
The greatest need, is affordable housing. That's the greatest need.
That's, but that's
separate, yeah.
that's,
No, that, yeah.
that's the next, that's the next.
Answer my question.
Right.
Yeah.
In addition to that, I would say, probably, it's really hard to say.
Yeah.
Basic needs are
That's fine.
extremely important. I mean, I work with the food bank, I work with Donna Falcone in my other job, and so I understand what basic needs are in the town. Quality childcare, obviously, if parents don't have quality childcare, then they can't work. Affordable quality childcare, then they can't work. That's, I mean, all these things are into play, affordable housing,
Yeah.
basic needs, affordable childcare. The mental, I mean, these things all relate to children. Looking at the Guilford population as a whole, I think that we see there's increase in numbers. I've heard from Lynn in mental health services. It's just, I mean,
Well, just looking at the allocations here, the largest amount to one single entity is 23 to BH Care,
Right.
23,000. Second largest amount is the Meals on Wheels program rather, and then 15 to Guilford Center for Children, which is a childcare issue.
Right.
You know, I won't elaborate, but you know, that.
BH Care, though, you know, it serves residents from multiple towns. I mean, I can tell you how many they serve from Guilford in the past year. Last year, they served 135 Guilford residents, which is approximately the same as last year, including 19 who had no insurance, 39 who were Medicaid only, a total of 58 underinsured or uninsured residents, which is a slight increase from last year. So it's about stable, I would say, from that aspect. So to ask what the biggest need is, it's really hard for me to say. They're all connected. They're all connected. And I really think that if there's, you know, I don't know much about affordable housing, but most of the concerns that we hear is that, you know, I can't afford my rent, so I need to find a cheaper apartment. And then, you know, if I have to pay more for my rent, then I can't afford to pay the childcare. And that's when we hear from the Guilford Center for Children or before and after care. Then they have folks that need what they call scholarships. And, you know, the Guilford Center for Children has some state sliding scale slots. And those folks have to qualify for that. Some are just a little bit over income and they can't pay the full amount for the full scale. So the Center for Children offers them a scholarship and then they ask the town to sort of help them with that. So it's all connected. That's the best way I can answer that.
Other questions? Just one last one. If we decide to make any adjustments on this, I think it would be, at least my preference, that it would be a gross dollar amount, and we'd ask you guys to.
We'll make the
you
individual decisions, yeah.
adjustments. Is that okay?
She's unfortunately used to me calling.
I don't like to hear that, but I understand it.
Part of the reality of our world. So,
Nobody
but
likes to hear
thank you
from
for the great
after
work you
this.
guys do on this. Yeah, this is, over the last year and a half, many of these organizations benefited from American Rescue Plan funds.
Yes.
They weren't as much as some of us might have wanted to be, but they did make some difference. But their needs continue to grow.
Yeah, and some of the needs that we hear year after year, you know, those are not American Rescue, they're not supported by American Rescue Plan funds, right? So for example, the childcare issues, you know, just continuing to provide parents with scholarships. I mean, those are, you know, that's every year going forward and that doesn't really change. And that's just, you know, that's just a fact of life. So, yeah.
What is the community health center? I could look up the back.
Community Health Center is, maybe you read?
I know, I didn't.
Well, give her something to do this evening.
Yes. So the Community Health Center is a large organization. They're statewide. They have it is a federally qualified health facility. So what that means is that they accept everybody who walks through their doors. It's required by law to accept everybody who walks through their doors. They have a facility in Clinton and they're a statewide primary care organization and they provide healthcare. And they get many low-income folks because they don't turn anybody away.
Thank you.
They used to come and ask for, I have data going back years and years. They used to come and ask for $30,000 and we'd give them like maybe 3,000. They would like, what? Why are you doing this? We would explain, these are town funds. We have to be very discretionary about how these funds are used. Plus you're a statewide organization, you know, what we provide, you know, they have funding from all kinds of resources. Because they're a federally qualified health center, that means they get all kinds of federal funds too. I'm not an expert on that by any means, but that's why their numbers are much lower now when they come to us. But the need, we mean, they've asked for 5,000, we're recommending 5,000. But that's a bigger organization, so they can handle cuts more easily than other organizations can.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Good.
Okay.
Ma'am, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Alright.
Sorry you had to wait so long.
Oh, okay.
Cold outside anyway.
It is.
Good afternoon, again.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really hard following the police department and public works. Tough acts to follow. So I'm here to propose finance committee selectmen increasing the EDC budget by 42,000 approximately on the staffing lines and another 2,500 for special events. And I think over time, the amount of resources that went into EDC staffing has decreased over the years, even though the current POCD calls for the coordinator position to be a full-time. I would preface my further comments that these additional resources would be used judiciously and only on the demand of the community and business community. So, you know, a few of the projects that kind of drive this in my thinking going forward over the next months and years, our marina area and the develop of that, the marina area in that project, public works property, Boston Street property, Village West development, the Route 1 West development in and of itself, which is starting to get some legs. Special event planning, Gilmore Girls Fan Fest events and working to support that. It takes time, a few dollars here and there. And the ever omnipresent septic issues and solutions with landowners and local merchants. Right. Now, aside from those kind of high level projects, there's the day-to-day work. There's business retention, meeting with local merchants, listening to their concerns, working through their problems, those types of things. There's also building our business database, which is currently we have about 3,000 businesses in town. We have about 10% of those businesses with their email address. So a lot of work needs to be done there. Our tourism website is a work in progress. It's been broken for a while. I'm starting to fix it now. So that's additional time and resources needed to fix that. Working with our Affordable Housing Commission and local developers to support new housing projects, middle housing, and affordable housing. So, you know, I think the investment here is pennies on the dollar to increase the tax rolls, create more attraction to the town, and support the economy and merchant base. So I'll stop there for any questions.
Questions?
So the increase in full-time salaries, is that to get another full-time person or to add more hours to your position?
Speaking of third party, add more hours to my position and some possible clerical help if needed.
You're currently budgeted at 24 hours a week?
Correct.
Okay, so you want to become 35 or?
I feel it would kind of end up around 30 hours a week.
Okay.
Some weeks might be more, some weeks less.
And then part-time is the clerical help you meant?
Correct.
Okay.
Again, if needed. We do have a secretary that supports the commission who could pick up some time and help with website entry and kind of the clerical things of the database as well.
So if there was an increase to the secretarial hours, would that, could that work instead of the $12,000 line for the part-time salary? I mean, I realize it would be more money in the secretarial line, but
I'm sorry, say that again, Cindy, I didn't understand.
well, you're asking for 12,000 in part-time salaries for clerical and
Could we, if we added more here to your commission secretary to do some of that work and take it out of here?
It's too, I'm not sure this current person in this role has the time to do it. I guess the answer is yes.
okay, thank you.
Well, John has outlined a couple of things that we've known that has been somewhat of a challenge, and some of them are project management, particularly as it relates to some of these larger projects that are coming down the pike, and coordinating amongst the various departments. And one in particular that he just mentioned was affordable housing. And you're going to hear in a couple of minutes from the affordable housing folks about their plans and support. We don't have official staff support for the Affordable Housing Commission, which is becoming an increasingly important avenue for us to continue to work on. A couple of those things are driving that. So John and I have had discussions about his possible assumption of some of those other duties. So. Any other questions?
So we're not connected to the Madison situation at all at this point?
No. And actually, ironically, First Selectmen and Lyons and Madison took the funding that they were using for their EDC individual for project management, for internal project management in Madison. So, because they also don't have staff that turf some of these projects. So, anything further?
Where?
Your favorite? I know what you're asking. It's Rex Development.
It was coming.
Funds in there still for Rex Development. Include those
Rex.
under the program development team.
I did not.
Okay.
We can get that.
That used to be about 12.
When you say you didn't include it, or you didn't, we're still, yeah, I know we used them even a few times this year.
It's still in the
It's in the
line
budget,
items,
yeah,
so.
it's not detailed though, right? I think the 11,000 for business development or 12,000 for business development, John, you just want to talk about what's comprised in that? So I think that's where the Rex used to be.
Okay. Yeah, that's where it is.
Yeah.
So it isn't.
Yeah, it is in there.
Oh, good.
Do you,
That's not what Charles would say.
No, we actually did use them.
We are, targeted projects with brownfields and grants and things like
Yeah,
that.
we do have access to one of Rex's internal consultants.
Yeah, and the reason I bring it up is, now that we're not coordinating with something like Rex becomes that much more important because, not only that direction, but, with the airport becoming more and more of an economic driver in the entire region, knowing what's going on with our neighbors is important.
is that the entire 12 or is that part of the 12?
I thought it was 8. It used to be around 8 for Rex, as I remember.
Looking up, it's the majority of it.
It is the majority.
And the increase in tourism from 1,000 to 3,000.
Supporting special events, trying to attract more events like the Fan Fest.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Event
So,
like that.
Yeah.
Again, it'd only be used if needed.
Is the
Same
Gilmore
with the
Girls going to be an annual event?
Well,
It's coming.
Well, they're coming this year.
Oh, yeah. So
They are
that
coming
is something that I thought it was, okay, so that's something that they run on a.
They came back to us and they had a very positive experience here and they want to return. So we hope that it will turn into.
They've committed. They've already announced their dates for next year. And I do have to say.
I think it surprised a lot of people they weren't anticipating.
They're going to a different town in Connecticut every year and they finally landed here and they're coming back.
Yeah, they had actually gone up to Maine, I think, right, or New Hampshire or somewhere for a couple of years.
And some other towns in Connecticut.
Right,
Kent,
but
their experience in Kent wasn't good, but They had a great experience here. They want to come back. The merchants loved it.
Yeah.
They had banner sale days.
Well, we, you know, perfect location and everything too.
Well,
Train.
Yeah, and it hopefully is gonna be even more perfect. One of the things that they're looking to do is to have their meeting area on the green with a large tent on the green, as opposed to at the exit where people had to schlep back and forth to get downtown to the merchants. John has also already started working with a couple of the merchants and saying, you know, this is one of those events that you probably should plan to stay open later. And particularly the restaurants and eateries, because some of their events don't end until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. It's tough to find it.
There's a prime example. I'm taking the lead for the town, coordinating with their facilitator out of Austin, Texas. I have a couple of our green merchants on board who are going to help partner with me, as well as the chamber. And together we're going to have a series of meetings over the next months and put together the plan, the schedule, the impact to the town, workout, shuttle service, and so on and so forth, as well as use of the green. So, you know, that's a prime example of why I think we need more hours. And whether it's me or anybody else down the road, you really should be invested in this. Is my kind of a message.
The other item that John mentioned is one, you recall the board, we approved the hydrology and wastewater study for the septic area, for the septic concerns in the greater downtown area.
And the
I hate to use
adjacent
that,
property owners.
and the adjacent property owners, and that's gonna require at some point some pretty sophisticated interaction and coordination amongst those teams. It's gonna wind up potentially with a legal situation, even potentially a tax situation. But some of the things that we may need to consider would be advantageous to have our resources working closely with the merchants.
Well, that needs to
And-
be coordinated, but that's gonna affect, you know, private and
It really is. So, and those are the kind of projects I think that John could step in and handle. So,
Yeah. I mean, if 3 of these projects pop at once, my medication use is going up. So.
Anything else? Thanks, Jim.
Thank
All
you,
right.
John.
Have a good day. Thank you.
You too. The golf course waiting outside?
yeah, she just woke him up.
My friend Steve Berry out there. Is Laura still? She owns it, parking right. Oh, that's right. Thought she stayed on golf. Good afternoon, and thank you for your patience, gentlemen. Ted and Mr. Chairman, Steve, how are you?
Our numbers while we were out there.
Oh, good.
You wouldn't be the first.
And there were cookies in the break room, so.
There you go. Perfect.
Someone lost a tooth.
Yeah.
All right, who's, Ted, you making the
Yeah.
presentation?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Basically, I just want to tell you what's new, and just a quick rundown of what's new for this 2025 season at the golf course. We're promoting a youth golf award for the juniors in town, and basically just going to be promoting junior golf. They're writing out essays, and we're probably going to give a free membership to whoever writes out the nicest essay. So it's kind of interesting. I had a couple just come in recently. So it's just something new and different that we're promoting. Because Vicky retired, I call her my secretary. She's gonna be promoting the Women's Golf League a little bit more for this coming season, which will help out the revenue regarding the ladies. We had the course got rated this year by the Connecticut Golf Association, so we actually have a slope and it's rated on the scorecard. So all golf courses are rated, so it's something new that we did. And then we also.
What's our rating?
This goes by a slope, you know what I mean? Because we have a lot of undulations and we're fairly slopey, or I guess you want to say it's fairly high, you know, I mean, for difficulty, you know, as a golf course. I don't know the exact number, what it says on the card. I can't.
How do we compare to our peers?
Well, like our main competitor is the Apple 9, and the Apple 9 sits out in a field. So we get a lot of people that enjoy our golf course because we have character to our golf course. Whether out there, they have this
So
field.
is our rating equal there?
Ours is better.
Higher.
It's higher.
It's rated harder. Definitely more undulated.
Well, and
For sure.
It's definitely.
for those of you who are familiar, for those of you who aren't familiar with golf and slope and so forth, Mr. Barry and I occasionally try to find lower slope rated courses. They're not as hard to
They're gonna be
play.
playing at the Apple 9.
Higher the slope, the more challenging the course is. So you're
Oh,
not.
so it's not a quality rating,
No,
it's a
no,
challenge.
it's a difficult.
Right, so all you have to do is put a couple of rocks and boulders.
It's a peak.
Yeah.
And then we're offering this year a handicap system. So if you want actually a handicap to your score, that's something new that we're offering this year. So you can post a score with a handicap system. You can track your stats. You can have a GPS on your phone of the course on it. You also calculate your handicap, and then also if you have an Apple Watch, it integrates into your Apple Watch on your phone.
This is a Garmin watch.
Right, it's the same
Garmin
thing.
does
So it's
too.
just kind of, we're just getting up to times a little bit, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
people
you
can.
can't see GPS because you can
Right.
see across the thing, but
That's some of the
health-wise
things that.
maybe.
It's yardage.
You need a GPS.
It's yardage.
I wanna go
It's
with it.
cheating, I call it.
Yeah, but a lot of people like that. They hit a shot and they can just look on their watch and they know how many yards they are away from the flag. So it's pretty nice. So we built a new 7T this late past fall, and then we're gonna be putting in a practice hitting cage behind the clubhouse. So that's what's coming new for the 2025 season, just to fill you guys in. Budget line items. I'm starting out from, increases. We have 5 increases in our budget line item. We're starting at the lowest and kind of going to the highest. So our education and training was going up $300 just between our memberships, our national Connecticut Golf Association, different things. Our merchandise, which we sell, we're selling more hats, gloves, balls, shirts. So we're increasing that by $500. Our concession, which is, I just sell power bars and some water and chips and sodas. We're selling more of that, so that's why I'm increasing some of that. Our water bill is going up $1,300 because, well, last year we spent $13,000. This year we spent $24,000. Everyone knows how dry the season was, so we increased the water bill a little bit. We are presently working as a commission on the water bill. I'm talking to a professional well person about trying to figure out if we can hook a well to our system and to our pump systems and what we can do there. I don't have anything presently for you, but we're going to be working on that as our commission members. I know you guys have some questions about that.
Bob's favorites.
And then our grounds maintenance is basically just our, because we're getting more rounds of golf, which you'll see in our revenue numbers in the last 3 years. Our costs are going up a little bit regarding seed, fertilizer, wetting agents, sand, top dressing material, lime. And that's my biggest line item where I increase in our budget. What's good about the budget, where we're gonna get a little bit of savings, the 2 line items is our advertising. We reduced our advertising by 500 and our travel and our expense because I picked up a truck, which we worked out through the Public Works Department. We're not gonna have that expense anymore, but so we'll reduce that by $2,000 or whatever that is, was my mileage expense.
So mileage should be 0.
Yeah, so basically, we're gonna put that in there 0 because we're not gonna have that anymore.
What is the logic of reducing the advertising? I thought we always wanted to get more rounds. What is the logic of reducing the advertising?
Well, basically between online and Simply Guilford, I mean, it's kind of where we're advertising nowadays.
So we're not gonna be advertising, let's just.
Right, we're not
different
throwing ads
things.
in the paper because let's face it, a lot of people don't read a lot of the paper anymore.
Okay.
You
Well,
know,
I
that's
just
kind of
wanted to
where.
make
Read it online.
That makes sense.
Right, that's kind of where we're at with that. As a commission. That's somewhat what I had for you. I mean, if you guys have questions you want to ask me or, or permission.
I'll just add that he did, make reference to revenue. The revenue was going up 30,000. The recommended revenue up 30,000.
Yeah, so it's for this coming season, we're saying 305, but in the last 3 years, we've been over 300, anywhere from 320 to 340 for the last 3 years.
It's one of my favorite reports at the Board of
And the
Finance
numbers,
meeting.
so-
Great turnaround.
And, right, and we're looking,
Remember.
right, and we're still on ballpark even the start of this year to look at the, mid threes already. Just to let you know, and we did go up on non-resident rates across the board this coming season, so we do have a little bit more in revenue coming in, just to let you know.
Yeah, I did
For
see
this
that.
coming season.
Greens fees.
Greens,
See that
just,
they went
just
up.
on greens fees.
Greens fees and season pass holders as well.
Okay.
For non-residents, we kept their resident rate stable where it was this year.
I still feel it's a value. It's a value. I think it's warranted. Yeah.
Is this, did I hear, is this what Vicky's gonna be working on? Did I hear something about a young women's league? High school girls?
She's in the women's league presently right now, so she's retiring, and so she's gonna be more involved in that, so she's gonna be getting some more ladies involved. We'd like to see more ladies at the golf course,
So
so,
all on her own, volunteer.
yeah, so
No cost.
something that she's gonna be heading up. That'd be nice.
Pulling in kids from the high school as well, did I hear? Or-
Did you hear about the junior?
That's it,
babysitter?
yeah.
Yeah, and then we also have the golf team that comes
The
up
golf
and
team
plays, but they're
plays
playing at
there.
Madison, but they come over and they usually play on Mondays and Fridays at our place. The golf team.
We've reached out to the coach at the golf, that I can't think of Dave's last name, and to see if we can utilize the players as volunteers on the course to help Ted, whether it be in the clubhouse or on the course, filling divots, repairing, raking traps, repairing good ball marks. We got very little activity from them. I know they all have to do volunteer work, but I think they've reduced the hours that they have to do it, and so they found other places to volunteer other than the course. Unfortunately, we could have benefited from that, but to help Ted out a bit. They do golf for free, so maybe this could be a nice.
Well, I would keep on it, because every year they're gonna get a new group of kids coming.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, you did talk about your revenues, the revenues through November, which very strong. You're at 65% of your total. You've still got April, May, and June to go, so.
Yeah, right.
The grounds maintenance increase, it's
Yeah.
big, it's 35%.
Yep.
Is that something new in there or just pricing?
Basically, just to, our increase, we went from 13,000 rounds probably to about 15,000 rounds. So it's just seed fertilizer, my average cost, new bunker sand. It just, my costs are going up, the trucking costs are going up. So it's just all,
Okay, it's usage plus price increase.
two here, two here, two here, what I mean? It's kind of. What it is.
You're in a hole. Anything further? Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We'll be in touch. Good
Okay,
job.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, a little while ago.
Okay, Rob, come on up. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, yeah.
sir.
Say good morning now.
Good evening, pretty soon.
Before I delve into the few increases, I'll just say the reason overall is just a general increase in traffic at the library across the board. I know we're behind schedule, so I'll spare you the full-blown presentation. But every year, the state library does a survey of all the public libraries. This year, there were 170 libraries that responded. And these are numbers that have always been in this ballpark, but we're 50th in terms of the population served. We are 50th in terms of municipal appropriation. Pretty much in every other service category, we're around 20th. So we're 20th in circulation, we're 20th in library visitations. A couple standout numbers, we were 11th in team program attendance, which I thought Emma Barnes, our team librarian, took a fantastic job.
That's great.
And it's a segue into what the first increase I'll describe. We are 6th in the state in terms of per capita use of e-materials. Now, e-materials is a tricky topic, and I want to be a little careful because there's legislation that's probably going to be pending at the state level again, which is not passed. It's failed a few times now. I've got mixed feelings about it, but I don't want to get too into it. I've talked to Christine Cohen about it. I've talked to my peers, and it's an interesting topic. But I am asking for a $2,500 increase to the electronic materials line. A couple of points to make. When that line was first created by Sandy many years ago, we were thinking in terms of DVDs and books on CD. Now we're talking about streaming services and actual digital books, the licensing of which is tricky. The costs are much, much higher, and it doesn't have that same. Really, the complication started with the old school library model where the doctrine of first use. You buy a book, you buy all of the rights associated with that book. You can do whatever you want with it. DVDs operate in the same way, books on CD operate in the same way. Digital services that are streaming do not operate in the same way. That's digital rights management. That gets a little tricky and expensive. It's not ideal, but Guilford has a ravenous appetite for these materials. We're always the highest in Lyon. We're always, one of the highest in the state. So the cost keeps going up, and that's with the library board. We reduced, like Hoopla, for example, is one service that's particularly expensive, but it's very popular. The library board had a vote. We reduced the number of checkouts per person per month from 7 to 4 last year. That was just to keep it a little bit under control. Now, I hesitated to ask for this increase in the past because I thought maybe it was a kind of a freak during COVID. It all went up during COVID. Then it plateaued. Then somehow in August of 2023, it went way up again. So I think people are kind of moving from print to digital. But on the other hand, the print books are still circulating at a flat rate as well. So this is definitely an increase. Now, again, I have to sort of stop and say we're very, very thankful for the Friends of the Library and the Guilford Library Association, who are meeting the lion's share of the cost of materials and all of the share of cost for programming. But just to be safe, I think we need to ask for a little increase of this $2,500 in electronic materials. And a few things that would also include that aren't quite as, noted, things like the subscription to Consumer Reports, the subscription to Ancestry.com, Reference USA, which is now called Data Axle, which is just a database that local businesses use. So it's a large number of materials, but the cost is going up because of the usage of just books. Now, the Friends are spending more on that. The GLA, the Guilford Library Association, is spending more on that. We're not coming up to the same level of service we are with print books, where the wait time, you expect a wait time when you put a hold on a brand new bestseller. That's to be expected. And no one's surprised by that. But for digitals, that wait time is, when it got to be over 6 months for a brand new bestseller, we had to so then we started putting some private money into that. So we're not asking the town to solve that issue. We'll deal with that on our own. But we are asking just at the base level to buy, some of the core materials that we would buy for the print collection can also be bought in the digital collection. So it's a fairly humble increase. We're also asking for a $2,500 increase to the book budget. And for that, I would just point out that that's nowhere near the $24,000 level that was at before the Great Recession in 2008. Sandy made what I think is the correct decision to cut budgetary issues instead of layoffs when we had to make cuts during that time period. So we're just trying to get that back up a little bit. And again, I'm only doing that because of the fact that more Friends money and more Guilford Library Association money is being pulled towards digital products. So to put it in perspective, the $7,500 that we would go to if this passes, that would basically cover the magazine subscriptions, which have gone down. We're buying fewer print magazines, and the newspapers, which have all gone up as well. So that's just to make kind of the basic demands for just what I consider routine information access for folks. And many of, we still have plenty of people that are not digital and, just come in and read the paper. So I think that's a fairly humble ask. The bigger ask is building maintenance, which again is just a reflection on the fact that we're always busier and the building is aging. So Part of that is the increase to our fee to libraries online, the consortium. And that, I think, is some of the best well-spent money we do. There was a slight increase to the delivery service. But Lion has enabled us to keep the level of service that we had before the state library services failed, what was that, maybe 8 or 9 years ago?
I know
So-
the exact date.
Yeah.
It was it's April 11th, 2014. But anyway, the state library failed us and the consortiums had to go to privatizing delivery service.
So that is now a little over $5,000 a year for us, but that's a good 12 to 14 bins a day just coming and going. It's a very heavily used service. The other increases would be the electricity increase, which was, recommended by the town. The phone increase is not essential, but we do have a 16-year-old phone system. We've been spending more on hardware replacement every year. This would have some added features. So it's kind of contingent upon the capital budget being approved. If we get the phone upgrade that we requested in the capital line, that would lead to an increase in our monthly bill. If I had to cut something, I would probably cut this because we do muddle through with the phone system. It has some features I would love to see. Things like right now, if I get a call and I'm not visible at my desk, I get paged in the library, which is fine, but then that's just a little more noise in the library, a little more noise in the meeting room. The new service would allow, librarians to have it go directly to their cell phone if they're not at their desk. That's, but again, that one we could probably live without. And
That's
then
contingent upon the capital.
it's a contingent on
You
the
get the
capital.
capital, you're gonna need
We're
that
gonna need the
increase. If
extra.
you don't get the capital, you don't need that.
Exactly.
increase. Got it.
And then one other substantial increase, which I probably should have done a while ago, and I'd like to thank the Guilford Library Association for always giving me flexibility to sort of spend as needed. We have a supplies increase. That started a while ago during the pandemic. We got a $17,000 federal grant, which mitigated the cost back then. Then we had a very lucky $25,000 donation that I was not expecting immediately after the pandemic. But supplies costs have continued to go up. And again, I always try to hesitate before I ask for an increase to the taxpayer whenever possible. But things like now hand towels in the bathroom are expected. That didn't used to be the case. We used to just rely only on the hand dryer. Purell is expected to be stocked up. Certain things, and then there's just been inflation across the board. So the supply increase really began in 22-23 and then went way up in 23-24. I didn't ask the town for that monies because the library board was very flexible and letting me use other funds to meet those demands. But and again, the other thing I was not certain of that I wanted to kind of watch the trend. Right after the pandemic or during the pandemic and then immediately after, the Madison Library was going through a major renovation project, which is now complete. I honestly believe we might see a reduction in traffic because of that. Because at the height of that project, 20% of our circulations were Madison patrons. Branford has a lesser, but still substantial renovation around the same time, a little before. So I really thought we might see a reduction in either circulation or foot traffic or both. That has not happened. They were up last year. And halfway through this fiscal year, they're up again. So for whatever, it's good. It's a good problem to have. The town loves its library. It's all good. But we are seeing just more foot traffic, more cleaning, more everything. So so that is the highlights of all the increases.
Of the electronic materials, as somebody who's run up against that this year, how many does that represent?
How many circulations?
Yeah, ballpark. I don't know what it's.
Oh, you mean for all the various services or you mean the actual circulation part of it?
Well, my understanding is, when you say electronic materials, isn't that like you go on Libby and you want to get a book and there's only so many subscriptions. Is that what that represents?
Well, Libby is managed by Libraries Online, so that would include ebooks, audiobooks, and magazines.
Right.
Hoopla is just Guilford pays for that separately.
Oh, okay.
So that is altogether, I think we're spending about $80,000 on digital subscriptions. Of the town's portion, we're asking to go up to 22. So the Friends and the GLA are meeting the lion's share of that.
You know, it'd be really interesting to see, to kind of put this in perspective, and you probably have it, is sort of a column for all your expenses. And then we could see. Well,
Right, I tried to do that with the main one. The Friends, I don't want to get too technical because it varies from year to year, but they've been a steady, they actually, we had the record of $100,000 last year, which was amazing. This year, we're budgeted at 90,000. I like to be cautious with the Friends because, you know, there could be a hurricane during the fall book sale. But even if it's not binary. They also bring in over $30,000 in their annual appeal. And they do an online sales, which makes approximately $30,000. So even if there was a big problem, it might dip to 75,000 some year, but it's not gonna go much below that.
Go on GuideStar and look up the 990.
Yes.
It's all there. We know.
Yes.
Yep. All right. But something like a 12.5% increase in the electronic materials, that doesn't mean that you're going up. That means our share is going up.
Your share is going up, but it's still a very small
Very
fraction.
small part,
Yes.
yeah.
And again, I'll remind you that we don't ask anything from the town for program expenses. That's 100% funded by the Friends and the GLA, and that's gone up quite a bit as well since the pandemic. With concerts are going, everything's more, and the attendance is going up as well.
It just as an anecdote, it took me 30 years to get the town's portion of the book budget to 22,500. And in one day it went down to 2,500 and I had to cut it. So it was, but there's always been great town support. It's just the example of what you're
Just
pointing
one
out.
super small that I wanted to add when I was listening to the previous presentations and they mentioned Sid, who's a good friend of the family for many years. That's an example of a service that we don't always promote that much because it's just kind of is what it is. But we have a lot of special needs volunteers that we sort of go starting at a young age and we sort of foster them through adulthood. So Sid still comes to the library on a regular basis. And we have many other similar examples where we actually very carefully dole out our volunteer time so that there is extra volunteer. Like there's plenty of gung-ho volunteers that want to come in and shelve everything. And we have to say, no, just slow down. We're saving this for some special needs folks. And we have groups that come in and they've doubled the one group, the Transition Academy, is now increased as well. So so that's just a service that we do that's not always mentioned, but it's a big part of our day at the library.
Anything further?
Probably shouldn't say this out loud. The granddaughter wanted to watch Charlotte Swept last week. We went online to look for it, and you could either rent it, buy it, or watch it on Hoopla. And we cast it to the TV, and it was brilliant. So thank you.
Sure.
We need that number of Hoopla to go up though.
Yeah.
We're not afraid of money.
Yeah.
I hate that, and it's not quite the end of the month and it says you have used up all of your.
Four seems fair. Four seemed okay.
And that's again, and if, like say Greenwich, for example, their limit's 20. So if we opened up the floodgates, we would be up,
I need 20, but I got a long drive back and forth. I'm listening to those ebooks.
It's 4 per library card, so, the dog.
I didn't recommend, we do say, is your husband on there? We recommend that.
Rob, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, your patience is greatly appreciated. Last one standing.
Well, they wouldn't have been last,
Yeah,
but
they wouldn't
as it
have
worked
been.
out, right?
Well,
We started at the
affordable
bottom.
housing, and for those who aren't aware, Christy Rubendunst and Peter Coburn. Christy is the current acting chair of the newly formed Affordable Housing Commission, and Peter is, I think, assumed the role of finance for now. And this is unusual, as you know, we don't have very many boards or commissions that have their own budgets. And when we started talking about the program that they were going to do, because this is at their infancy stage, and these are concepts, and these are desires and wishes, are some of these requests that you're going to see here today, as they go about putting together their strategic plan, their tactical plans to inform the community and inform planning and zoning and work with the town planner and our economic development coordinator. They've already done that a couple of meetings with them. And I thought it was important, even though what we will most likely see here is these will be absorbed in other budgets. But I thought it was important for us to start to think about this initiative as not just something that's on the sidelines. this is a need that, demonstrated need not only in Guilford, but Connecticut and many other communities are moving along this pathway and placing more emphasis. And once again, this is an organization that doesn't have dedicated staff from the town to support them. They have been working with our town planner, which has been participating, but as you heard from her yesterday, the bandwidth she has to do these kind of things is so limited based on the day-to-day functions that they're doing over there. So anyway, with that, I'm going to leave it to you folks. And I did have the opportunity to review this budget with both Christie and Peter, and had suggested that there will be some adjustments to it, but I just wanted you to go through so we can all get a flavor for what's going on.
Thank you, Matt. You did an outstanding job of covering a lot of what I was going to say. That's okay. I don't need thunder. So that's others, but yeah, thank you for having us here. We're really appreciative of having a seat at the table and having your attention for this time. One thing I want to add is that we felt it was important to bring a budget forward at this time, even though it's very early in our existence, because it'll be 18 months before the next budget's in place. And we wanted to be able to express, what we thought might be coming about over the next period. So, having said that, most of the focus in our budget is really geared towards our charge as a commission, which is a outreach to and education of the community, and supporting efforts to develop affordable housing at a variety of levels within the town. That's really all I wanted to say to start with. I don't really plan to step through the budget unless you want me to. If you have questions, we can do that. If you want me to step through the budget, I can do that. So I'll leave it up to you.
What's
decide what you'd like me to do.
You see all the line items right there, the self-explanatory.
Yeah,
Seems fair.
So let's talk a little bit about what we talked about
Okay.
when we reviewed the thing. There is one of the area of the consultants, right? It talks about the references to POCD, and I know MJ had a little different perspective than I did on that. We won't go into great detail on that, but a lot of that kind of work I think is already contemplated with the POCD, although
we had a discussion with Ann that she felt that she's got a lot on her plate, as you've heard, and she felt that there would be some room that would be appropriate for us to get involved in some of the smaller zoning issues, and that would require some consultants. One of the things that we plan to do as well that really addresses some of these items is to seek funding from other sources, whether it's grants or state funds and that sort of thing, because we believe there will be funds available that we can get. Also, we've used funds in the past for a video that was prepared in 2016 that we need to update. We know that we can get some funds for that. I won't cover all of it, but that's something we plan to put a lot of effort into, because there is a broad support for affordable housing from different areas that will provide funding. We want to tap into that to the extent that we can to mitigate some of these costs.
to that point, I got an email from David Corus, which and he's now ready to engage with us. So that's great. That's going to be an opportunity for us to find funds. So, anyway.
And I followed up under the video outsourcing. Haven't even had a chance, I don't think, to share this with the rest of the commission, but the video, the 2016 video, Guilford Foundation has an affordable housing bucket in there, $7 million or whatever, and they subcontracted with Partnership for Strong Communities, and they were the ones who produced that video with a lot of volunteer input from us. So I spoke to the director of the foundation, and she couldn't commit the funds, but it's an avenue that the Guilford Foundation is very interested in, so I think we can definitely look to them for some support again on that.
And we would have to apply during one of their
I bet, yeah,
granting
but
cycles.
we have to do it by March 14th.
Right,
Yeah, so, but she said she would pay us.
And then, website services, that was also a point of discussion, whether it's internal or external. My preference is that, for the community, there's one place to go to, and that is the town's website, as opposed to, I know, we have a different site for Park and Rec, I think golf and board and band. But my theory is keep them coming to the same place, and then, Tracy and Tony can work to help you guys with that. So that's something I think we can absorb within other budgets. Travel expenses, legal services, we don't charge any department for
Well,
straight up legal services.
yeah, and please know that in putting this budget together, we worked a little bit off of our experience as an ad hoc committee to arrive at some of these activities as well as costs that are listed here. We know that it's in terms of the budget cycle, we were coming in too late, that the capital deadline had passed and operational. So yeah, and we're just trying to get on the board here and help you all know a little bit about where we're going strategically and what activities we think we'll have and where we think the costs will be. We hope they're generally pretty modest, but.
In my opening comment, when I met with them last week, it was, this is obviously a really well-crafted budget. You have a line item in there for $354. There's no rounding. No rounding up to 400. So I foresee most of the expenses that you're talking about probably being covered in the Selectmen, the smaller items, supplies, even the bus rental, the special event kind of thing. And then recording secretary, that's already in the Selectmen's budget, so that's there. And again, printing services, we've got very favorable pricing on, as I mentioned to you folks, on printing services. I'd be surprised if what you have listed there would be, probably a third of the cost based on what we found utilizing CCM's print services.
Right.
We've been learning every day about, where some of these costs might be lower, how we can mitigate some of these things.
And then postage obviously comes out of the Selectmen's budget as well. And then again, travel expenses for mileage, that kind of thing for attending events or stuff.
What do you think about the paper and the envelopes? Do you think that could be absorbed?
I think we could probably, what do you think? So, but nonetheless, I wanted people to be aware that this is something that we're starting to focus on. And while, we're not going to be committing this amount of money over time, there's probably some anticipation that my point is there should be a line item. Eventually be a line item.
Yeah, and really, I think for us, the message is that, we understand this, we're late in the game in the budgeting process, so a lot of this isn't as maybe well-defined as we would have liked it. Some of them are very small numbers, but that's how you put a budget together, right? And so when you get to the end of it, what we didn't want to have is a big surprise when 10 months from now, we said, hey, we're looking for this. And people said, well,
where'd that come from?
Yeah, what are you guys talking about? So, it's more, at this point, it's a communication tool. As we move down the road and things become more real, then we'll have some more substantive discussions about, what things might happen. So.
And I think I mentioned this to you guys, but I know you're looking at grant opportunities, right? We do have access to Council of Governments grant writing team. There's a resource there that we can enlist to help with grants, and also in a couple of ways. One, to identify potential grants, and secondly, to help in responding, formatting response.
That's great. Yeah.
And you'll have access to the Selectmen staff for some of that assistance as well.
may I ask a
Yes,
question?
certainly. Well, usually we ask for it.
Well, we're new at
No, I'm
this.
teasing.
So during our conversation, you had said that this would be, you would like this to be a separate line item in the budget.
Eventually, yes.
So would that be this time around or?
Probably not.
Probably not.
But
Okay.
it will eventually,
Okay.
the plan is for it to be included in next year's budget when things are a little more firmed up and your plans are a little more definitive.
Okay.
And so forth.
All right.
But you have my commitment that we're gonna find the funding. You're gonna need to do what you need to effectively execute the charge the Board of Selectmen has given you.
Mhm.
So,
I mean, we would,
Just like a lot of other
whether it's a
commissions.
separate line item or not, we still need the rationalization for the funds, so this is
Right.
not
This is-
not a worthless exercise.
No, so it's very important, so we know why it's in there, what the value is.
That was the point of the exercise.
Not lost.
You find out yourselves, right?
Yeah. Good.
You just had to wait 2.5 hours to get here.
Yes, yes,
It's
sorry-
okay.
sorry for that.
It's all about waiting, right?
We've seen worse.
Yeah.
I think we're becoming permanently attached to these chairs.
We only did find out
Thank you for your
later.
patience.
That's right.
Well, thank you for your time. I know it's been a
Thank you.
long day and a half for you folks.
Well, thank you for the work you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Okay. Is there anything else? Yeah, so move, is there a motion to adjourn?
So-
Moved and seconded. Non-debatable motion, but all in favor? Thank you all for your attention. Christie. You forgot yourself.